All right, we are live. Welcome. This is Orion Rising. I am your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into this show. Share this out, share this out, share this out. All right, welcome. Welcome. What do we got going on here? Sorry, I have to get that overlay down. There you go. Right. Denise, welcome. Reese, welcome. I see you guys there in the audience. If you don't say anything to me in the audience, hold on. I'm going to put myself up here on full screen. If I don't see in the audience there, if you don't say anything, there's Cody. Cody, welcome. She's over on YouTube, sitting there. So welcome. It's Friday night, the Law of One. Let me take these glasses off. I don't need those on right this second, but I will in a minute. Right. Let me make sure that I'm still sharing the screen here. Yes, I am. Okay. So it's Friday night, the Law of One. Sorry, my mom was up and deciding that she, right at 3:00, decided to get up and come in here to join me and to figure out what I was doing. So I had to get her to go and sit back down. So I don't know how long that's going to last until she realizes I'm in here again. And then she'll come in like she normally does and try to sit down and figure out what I'm doing at the dining room table. Having a hat on doesn't help. Right? She thinks I'm getting ready to go somewhere. Okay. So it's the Law of One. I rewound because we were on session 41, question 3. So I rewound it because question 3 was really long answer by Ross. So I'm going to start at session 41 or 42, whatever we're on, 41, I think. I'm going to start there again. Please share this out. I didn't have time to share it out because I was running behind here. So I'm going to share this out as well. Now I got to put my glasses back on because I can only see with one eye, and it bothers me if I'm not seeing with both eyes. One eye is blurry and the other eye is not. And then, of course, if I look at a distance, this eye is not blurry and this one is. But up close, this one sees fine, that one's blurry. So my visions are backwards on either eye. It's like Odin, only I don't have one blind eye, right? So share this out. I just shared this out to my page. So all the chat should come in here. Peter, welcome. I see Peter in the audience there. So hello. So, yeah, so I'm going to start over that session just because the question, when I was just trying to listen to it to find out where it works, I didn't write it down. I used to write it down when we end. I'm going to have to start doing that again because now I can't just like click on it and watch because I don't have it up on the screen anymore. So before I could just watch where we were and then click on it and start. Now I can't do that. So I have to actually listen wherever we start. So if we don't end up at the end of a session, then I have to go literally listen to the show and find out where it was that I left off. And then this one was, like I said, it was a really long answer by Ross. I figured we'll just go back and start the session over so we can discuss that. Okay, so share this out. Like I said, share this out, share this out, share this out, and we will get started. I'm going to do a sound check. So I'm going to go ahead and start playing raw here. And let me find out. Oh, here it is. I was not seeing the window where my media player is open. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. Give me a sound check. Let me know if you guys can hear it okay. Yeah, get everybody else in here. Where are they, Denise? Tag them, right? Where is everybody? We got Cody here who's sick, and she's in here listening to what's going on, right? So where are these other people who are not sick? I know it's Friday. Get them in here. Okay. So I'm going to do a sound check. You guys let me know if you can hear raw, okay, and then we'll just continue.
March 22nd, 1981. 42.0 Raw. I am Raw. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator.
Okay, so let me know if you guys can hear that. Anna, welcome. Right? Yeah, this time you found me because I actually didn't share it to my page first because that really messed everybody up. So I shared it to Orion Rising and then shared it from there to my page. Right? Yeah, Cody can hear it. Good. So, so welcome, Anna. So like I said, if you don't say hello to me in the chat, I don't know where you are. If you're on Twitter, I can't see the chat there. They haven't figured that nonsense out yet. So if you guys are on Twitter and you're watching me live on the Twitter, it used to be called a Periscope on Twitter. I don't know if they still call it that. But if I'm live there and you guys are listening on Twitter and you try to, there's nothing, you can leave a message there and I'll check it after the show because I'll go there to see if anybody makes a comment. So if you guys make a comment, I can answer them there. And if not, and you guys have access to Messenger, you can get into the Messenger chat on Messenger and look up the Law of One chat class, and you guys can get into that. And we have conversations after the class all week long, people talking and having conversations with one another to literally ask many questions. And then, of course, people message me personally to ask questions, and I talk to people all the time. Okay, and work with people all the time. So if you guys can hear it okay, Cody was the only one who said she can hear it, so it sounds good on YouTube. I don't know if you guys can hear it okay on Facebook. So, all right, let's go ahead and we're going to start with the session now that I did start for a second there. We're going to start with this in rewind. Like I said, I rewound it to the beginning because we were on question 3. So we'll go ahead and start this and just get right into it, okay?
We communicate now. 42.1 questioner. I have a question on balancing. It's quite long.
42. I apologize. Let's go. Yeah, see, long question, long answers in the beginning here.
And we'll copy it directly into the book as it is. If you can answer it without me reading it, it would save time. Otherwise, I will read it. Ra, I am Ra. We understand your desire to preserve your opportunity. However, a summary of the query would be well. For if we answer a mentally requested query, this query shall not be published. If you wish this answer to be for private use only, we shall proceed. 42.2 questioner. I will just read it very rapidly the question, then. I am going to make a statement and ask you to comment on its degree of accuracy. I am assuming that the balanced entity would not be swayed either towards positive or negative emotions by any situation which he might confront. By remaining unemotional in any situation, the balanced entity may clearly discern the appropriate and necessary responses in harmony with the law of one for each situation. Most entities on our planet find themselves unconsciously caught up into every emotional situation which they come in contact with according to their own unique biases, and because of these biases are unable to see clearly teach/learning opportunities and appropriate response in each emotional situation, and must therefore, through a process of much trial and error and enduring of resulting pain, repeat such situations many times until they become consciously aware of the need to balance.
Right. So welcome. Thank you, Vanessa. Welcome, Vanessa. Welcome, Penny. Welcome, Rick. If you guys don't say hi at all, then I don't know that you're here. So for anybody who is happen to be in the audience who doesn't talk, it's okay. You don't have to. You're not required. Welcome to everybody. And then, of course, you guys listening around the world on the MP3 broadcast, you guys don't have access to the chat live. So welcome to all of you guys out there in the world that are tuning in, wherever it is in the world, whatever time it is in the world, whatever day it is in the world that you're tuning into the show. Okay, so let's continue here. So literally, they're getting into the whole spiritual aspect of alignment and things like that. So it's actually going to be, that's why I wanted to rewind it, because it's going to be very long questions and very long answers for the first at least 3. I don't know about past that. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I read this.
Their energy centers and thusly their responses and behaviors. Once a person becomes consciously aware of the need to balance their energy centers and responses, the next step is to allow the appropriately positive or negative responses to emotional situations to flow smoothly through their being without retaining any of the emotional coloration after it has been consciously observed and allowed to flow through the being. And I am assuming that this ability to consciously observe the positively or negatively charged energy flowing through the being may be augmented by practice of the balancing exercises you have given us, with the result in balance being achieved for the entity, which would allow him to remain unemotional and undistort in regards to the law of one in any situation, much like the objective viewer of the television movie. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is an incorrect application of the balancing which we have discussed. The exercise of first experiencing feelings and then consciously discovering their antitheses within the being has as its objective not the smooth flow of feelings, both positive and negative, while remaining unswayed, but rather the objective of becoming unswayed. This is a simpler result and takes much practice, shall we say. The catalyst of experience works in order for the learn/teachings of this density to occur. However, if there is seen in the being a response, even if it is simply observed, the entity is still using the catalyst for learn/teaching. The end result is that the catalyst is no longer needed. Thus this density is no longer needed. This is not indifference or objectivity, but a finely tuned compassion and love which sees all things as love. This seeing elicits no response due to catalytic reactions. Thus the entity is now able to become co-creator of experiential occurrences. This is the truer balance. 42.3 questioner.
Okay, so I'm going to hold off right there because that was a very long, like I said, first, we're right on to 3. So I explained this last time, and I talked about this a lot, and I put out a couple of reels, shorts, whatever you want to call them, about it as well during this week, but prior to last week, coming around to now, about this, in fact, this particular subject, because this place when you design your life, you design things that I want to learn in this lifetime organically. You don't know that because when you're born, you're mind wiped, so you don't have memory of doing that. Then this place gives you the opportunity over and over again to see that lesson and learn that lesson. And let's go to the beginning of what Raw's talking about. And they're saying that the potentiation from all that happens around us causes us to be triggered in an emotional way because we are a physical body, we are the physical pain body, and part of our ego conscience that is assisting our consciousness reacts to things in a physical and emotional way. So that is not necessarily the proper thing, but it is the tool that we're supposed to become objective instead of subjective to. So instead of being a slave to triggers, slave to emotions, and knee-jerk reactions to things, we're supposed to overcome that. And that's why, there's nothing that you can control at all except for your mind. And knowing that, that's the first step in avoiding the trap. Knowing that you can, in fact, control your mind is the beginning of your enlightenment, because to know that and to start learning to practice that is becoming objective instead of subjective. So instead of reactionary in everything that happens to you, you start seeing and looking for things that happen to you in a way that is there something that I need to learn from this? So instead of reacting in an emotional way and immediately getting triggered in some way, you're actually looking at things and taking a step back and trying to see what you can learn from that. That's being objective. That's being objective in your nature towards the experience that's happening to you. That is the beginning of your ascension. So the realization of that I remember when I was very young, and if you're my sister or my brother were on right now, at least one sister and one brother out of the four sisters, they would know that our father, because I remember having this conversation with them, our father used to tell us all the time, turn everything that happens to you, everything that you experience, turn that, try to find something positive, try to find the lesson in everything instead of reacting and getting angry or sad or whatever, or getting emotional. Not to be completely unemotional, because emotion plays a role in your life. But I eventually started not being very emotional, and that drove people crazy because I wasn't emotionally available at a young age. By the time I was 18, starting to date in my teenage years, I wasn't as emotionally available as regular boys because I was always trying to see things from a perspective of a learning curve. So because of that, somebody could say something and I tap back into that. Now somebody could say something to me and I wouldn't react at all emotionally. That drives people crazy in this world. It drives people nuts if you don't react in an emotional way, especially when somebody's trying to, as we say here in America, get your goat. So if they're trying to trigger you in an emotional response and you don't, that makes them even more angry because it offends their ego that they're not able to do that. And they just know that if it were them, they would be getting very upset, and that makes them mad because you're not bowing to that. And you're immune to it. So literally, I've won so many arguments that I didn't even know I was in because I was just not participating, and I wasn't getting angry, and I was ignoring someone and thinking to myself, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do," like Jesus said on the cross, and they would get more and more mad, and I had no idea that it was even happening because I was not participating in any way, and they were seething inside and hating on me because how dare I not engage them. I've had relationships where women wanted me to hit them and I just wouldn't do it, And that made them even more mad. And then they would try to reach out and they would attack me physically because they were trying to get me to do that. They would claim that they weren't, but the only reason somebody physically attacks you is because they want to be in a physical confrontation, or they don't respect you enough to be worried that you're going to do anything in retaliation. I would never do anything in retaliation, but I was in martial arts from the time I was like 5, 6. Right. So I just wouldn't allow them to strike me. And that drives people even more crazy. And when they try to attack you and they can't do anything, they have to wear themselves out. So mentally, they would have to do that as well. So my point of this is that as you become aware of the ascension, and as you start to become aware that this place is supposed to be teaching you, and you start getting into the mindset of wanting to learn and trying to see things that's happening to you as a learning curve, as an experience. And I bring up Sweet Home Alabama a lot because of that scene with what is his name? I can't think of his name. They called him McDreamy back in the day. I can't think of his name right this second, but he was supposed to be marrying the girl, and she goes back to Alabama, and of course they were wanting to have the wedding there, and turns out she's been lying, and her name wasn't Carmichael, it was Suter, and she's actually married still, and she's trying to get her husband to give her a divorce because she thought that they were going to get a divorce, and she wants to get married to this guy. And at the end, if you have never seen the movie, then mute it for a few seconds here, because I'm about to give you a giveaway of the movie. But at the end, when they're literally at the altar and they're going to have the wedding, she realizes that she's still married and that she actually is in love with her childhood boyfriend, who was her husband, that she grew up with. And she doesn't want to marry the guy that she's with. And she turns to him and says, "You don't want to marry me because my heart is not mine to give away. It's already been taken." And he doesn't get angry. He just stands there and smiles, and she says, "I'm sorry." And he says, "Okay, that's all right." And then he stops, he pauses, and he smiles, and he says to himself out loud, "Wow, so this is what this feels like." And his mom just gets like irate and screaming, "You're not going to let her just do that, are you?" And he looks at her and he says, "Yeah, I think I am." And he turns around and he walks off with a smile. He saw it. He was awake enough. And he, instead of having a knee-jerk reaction and getting mad because he lost his bride, he saw that as the experience that it was, and was wise enough not to get angry and fly off the handle and throw a fit. He just accepted it. And even though he was in obvious pain and sadness, he didn't get mad and react that way or start crying. He just smiled and took it for what it was, and then turned it to something that he realized was a learning curve and an experience, and he just walked away. And then the mother, of course, insulted the other girls, his bride-to-be's mother, and the bride-to-be punches her in the face, which everybody applauds, right? So I loved that they did that, because they never explained why he reacted the way he did. And if you're awake, not woke, if you're awake, you realize why he reacted the way he did. And when I saw the movie the very first time, I was like, wow, that was brilliantly written and very well played out by the actor who played the part. So my point is, and this is what Ra's talking about, is that this place is the catalyst, and it's supposed to be, for your ascension, for you to expand your consciousness and learn from all of the things that are going on around you. No, it wasn't Ethan Hawke, but it was around that same time period. I keep getting Dylan McDermott, because he was around then too. He's now on the FBI show, but that's not him. But his last name is Mick something. And I can't think of his name. I could see his face, but I can't think of his name. So Cody asked that on YouTube if it was Ethan Hawke. No, but at the same time, back when Ethan Hawke was just starting out, because this had to have been 2005 or 6, whenever that movie came out. Somebody look that up. Sweet Home Alabama. Look it up and see who was in it. Who played the love interest to what's her name. So you have to become aware. That's becoming objective. when you stop knee-jerk reacting, like I could say Trump, and a lot of people out there in the world are just going to get angry at me right now and think I'm their enemy. And if I say things like, Trump is a hero, that's it. A lot of people are just triggered. The other way around, if I say Joe Biden, a lot of people are going to get triggered, especially here in the United States. Very divisive politics. That religion of evil is very, yes, Patrick Dempsey. That's who it was. His name's not Mick something, but he is Irish. So Patrick Dempsey. Thank you, Penny. Patrick Dempsey. They used to call him McDreamy because he is a Mick. Patrick Dempsey, and he did a great job in that movie and in that scene. That was the last scene I think he was even in the movie. It was because the movie only was on for about another 5 or 10 minutes after that before it was over. But that was a great scene, and he was like, wow, big smile on his face too, and you could see that he was inside. You could see the pain. Wow, so this is what that feels like. And his mom was like, you are not going to let her get away with it, are you? And he's like, yeah, I think I am. And he walked away. But you could tell that he was living in the moment and not reacting in a negative way. And he just took it as a learning curve. So my father, when I was very young, would tell all of us that no matter what happens, turn it into a positive, look for and find what you can do. And so because of that in life, I'm one of those guys that no matter what happens, my usual reaction is, okay, so that just happened. And people would get angry, or upset. Now, how can you just say that? I don't get upset. So because of that drives people crazy, right? But that's becoming objective. When you start to do that, it's not wrong to be unemotional in your life, but it's not, there is a time for everything. Everything, has a turn, like the song says in the hymn from the Bible, to every season, a turn for, so literally there is a place for everything, but it doesn't mean that you should be the lizard brain. The lower vibration is emotion, the lower 3 chakras. So if you find yourself getting triggered and getting angry, it's because you pre-programmed something into your mind and your psyche saying, if this happened, you're writing the program. So you're saying, if this happens, go to this, and you set up this whole scenario. And this is what happens to us as we're children. We're being fed this. If you're a little girl, you're told if boys say this, and this, these words, you have to go fly off the handle. Little boys are told that if little girls or women say this, or this words, you have to fly off the handle. And so same thing with other kids. You immediately, that's it. Those are fighting words. That is programmed into you. So society does that. And it's not your fault, because when you're born, your programming starts. When you're first born, we talk about this in the evolution of the soul, you're locked in, you're mind wiped. So you're supposed to be locked in. So you're mind wiped, you have the forgetting, you don't know that you have an immortal soul. So you're born and in there you're thinking. I remember doing that. And I remember that my thinking process is exactly the way it is currently, which is strange because I didn't know language. So your thinking process, you think, is in language when it's not, because I didn't know English yet. However, I could understand everything that everyone was saying to me, but I couldn't get this physical body to say words back. I've talked about that many times. But yet I knew what was going on. So I picked up language very quickly and I understood what was going on. I think that has to do with the development of the entire person, the body, in the brain while you're in the womb, because you hear everybody talking. You hear it through your mommy's tummy. So you actually you feel the vibration. I remember as a very young child, my father holding me and rocking me to sleep, and I was laying on his chest, and I remember I could hear his voice and feel the vibration of his voice through my body, as well as through my head, as well as hearing him through my ears. I remember I have those memories that people trip on that, because I have I don't have as much memory of being in the womb, but when I really concentrate on it, I do. But being born. And then everything that ensued after that, I have a lot far more memory than most people. And the more I concentrate, the more I realize I remember everything. So there is no difference in the way I think now and the way I thought then, but then not everybody's unveiled. I still had to learn how to fend off this place because it indoctrinates you. First thing that happens is your parents trying to get you to talk, start pointing at things and telling you what they are. So they're solidifying your construct and your what this place, this illusion is called as a reality. They program you: car, truck, mama, dada, mama, dada, mama, sister, baby, baba, bottle, whatever they call it in your particular world, whatever nationality you are on the planet, whatever your ecosystem has. And that's how they start teaching you what this place is, and that actually locks you in to this trap. And even if they weren't there, you would make up things. That's how language was made up, is that people didn't have any what they called anything, and they would look at something and they would call it something, and everyone would agree that was the name of it. Weirdly, that those things in many languages are very similar. So there is something to instinct of the human condition that conditions us, because many words in many languages, and some would say that evolved over time, that they learned those, because you can tell words that were words that were introduced at a later time in different languages, like the word pizza, right? That didn't originate in, say, Norway, but they call it pizza, right? So they didn't have what that was until it was introduced from the Italians. So they learned that word, and then they integrated that word into their language. So other words, though, you can tell, and linguists talk about that. I know, because I'm learning so many languages, 23 or 25 languages now, that I look into what linguists have to say about language. And there are so many cultures that say words almost identical, but they do interact. So so they're still trying to figure out if they independently came up with saying things differently, because it just happens that regionally people talk differently depending on where they're from as a culture and what culture they pick up, right? So if you have an international culture, then it changes the narrative. My point of that, without just staying on that too long, my point of that is, right, so yeah, Anna saying something that, let me put on my glasses, she says, my hearing language is through vibrations. That was how I learned how to talk with my hands on people's throats. So you felt the vibration. So you remember doing that. So you would put your hands there and you would feel the vibration. That's very smart, because I did it in a sense the same way without putting my hand. And I remember doing that on my father's throat as well, but the chest, being on the chest and hearing that. So the vibration, as well as the words they're saying, you just have to mimic that, right? So Anna, that's really cool. I wonder how young you were because you're saying you're learning to talk, so you must have been 1-2 years old, right? While you were starting to do that. That's like that commercial that's on television now where grandma's deaf and she has the little grandbaby who's just a tiny little thing in a diaper, and grandma's signing grandma to the baby and then saying yes. And when she goes yes, the baby tries to respond. So the baby's trying to mimic what grandma's doing when grandma's saying yes. The baby gets her or his, or I think it's a little girl, but don't quote me, but a little hand moving, trying to say, yeah, yeah. So the baby inside understands what's going on, but they can't get the body to communicate yet. That's what my problem was, and I'm sure yours as well, was that you couldn't. So you were 6 and you never knew. I didn't know that you were deaf. I didn't know that you had a problem with hearing. Anna says I was 6. They never knew that I was born deaf. I had no idea that you were deaf. We never talked about that. So I didn't even know that. Well, you're not completely deaf, right? Unless you're just reading the words on the screen and not hearing my voice. I didn't think about that. I've never asked. So, yeah, and a buddy of mine, his mom is deaf. I think she's still alive. Don't quote me. But he grew up learning sign language and speaking because of that. Him and his 2 brothers. He's the one that started me on sign language when I was, 12, 14 years old. I'm still not completely fluent. And I go back and I look at it. I should be learning it as much as I am regular spoken language. I did for a while, but then I got away from it. But members of my family, my younger brother is fluent in sign language. And so when people need a translator, if he happens to be around, he translates. My niece, one of my sister's daughters, is also fluent. And who is it that's taking it now? I think my other sister's daughter is now taking sign language. I think she told me she was doing that because she has a son who has developmental problems. And so they're teaching sign language as well as words because they're not sure if he has a hearing problem or just a deficiency in learning. So they're learning sign language as well as spoken and written words to assist with that learning curve to breach that gap of what's going on. So I love that. But then there's differences because you have American Sign Language and then you have European or world sign language. So depending on where you grew up, if you grew up in America, we're all different than everybody else in the world. Over here, we drive on the right side instead of the left, and we speak backwards with this English than everybody else on the planet. And our sign language and American Sign Language is completely different. Similar in some ways, but completely different. So it's unfortunate for deaf people. They have to learn, if they're in America, they learn American Sign Language. But if they're going to go to the rest of the world, they have to also learn European Sign Language to go to Europe, and World Sign Language for other places, depending on who speaks what in what country. But then again, you have to do that with a language too, unless you have an interpreter, right? So I didn't know that. Denise said you're amazing. You are amazing, and I was unaware that you were deaf all this time. So hopefully if you're reading, because I didn't see if you answered that, hopefully if you're reading everything that I'm saying, then good for you, right? Because I talk fast. I talk fast. I know that when the thing's on at the bottom, I've watched it to make sure that it translates me properly. It actually does. It does a pretty good job. Okay. So getting back on point, the beginning of your ascension, and then we'll get back to Raw talking about it. It's question 3. The beginning of your ascension this is why I always say the first step in avoiding a trap is knowing of its existence. The beginning of your ascension is to realize that this place is here to teach you. You're supposed to learn from your life. Knowing that is the beginning. And then not being triggered and deprogramming yourself from the programming that you got from all of your family members, your peers, this entire planet, all the programming that you get. That's why, who was it? Marie Osmond said that her mother told her, we spend the second half of our lives undoing all the things they did to us in the first half. That's the truth. Maybe not necessarily literally the halfway point in your life, but at some point in your life, you begin your ascension. You begin not being a victim. You begin your trek to surviving and living your own life. And so at some point, you in your life, every single person says, enough of this. This isn't what life is supposed to be. Or I hate living with my parents, or I need a better job, or I need a better education. Something happens in your life that you learn from that changes the course for you. And that is the beginning of then you becoming wiser, because you're no longer just existing or subsisting in this place. You then start to, and this is what you're supposed to do. That's supposed to happen organically and naturally for you. And then you start to ascend by no longer reacting. And the more you become wise, the more you become awake, the less you react that way. I think I told you about one time when I was 30. No, I wasn't even 30 yet. I was 26, 27 years old. And I was a manager of a retail store. And this woman came in, and it was during the holiday season. So it was Christmas, and we were selling ornaments. And we had advertised in our ad that went out in the mail that we had all these ornaments and that they were limited time. But it said on the ad, not every store has all of these ornaments, because we just had gotten them, bought in bulk, I think from China. I don't know where, Taiwan, somewhere overseas, doesn't matter. Even if it's manufactured in the United States, we would just buy them in bulk. That's what everyone does. And so you're limited. You don't know how many you're going to get of everything. And so on the ad, it said not every store has all of these, and this one woman decided she wanted to have every single one of those. I guess she's a collector. So she literally got angry about that. So okay, so Anna's replying to me. She said, I'm completely deaf to high pitch, but I can hear deep tones 40%. This is why I use my hands to feel the vibrations and vibrations. She says, screaming kids at work don't bother me. Right. Yeah, I guess you're right there. They wouldn't bother you, so that's great. So literally this woman got angry at me and started yelling at me, and it didn't matter what I said to her. She wasn't going to be pleased no matter what I said. And every time I literally said, I will call around, find out what store has this particular one that you want. I'll drive there and get it for you. She didn't care. She was just upset. So I realized, I had been in college taking psychology courses as well, which drove everybody around me nuts. My brother did the same thing, still drives everybody around us nuts. But I realized that whatever is going on in her life currently, somebody is treating her horribly, or she's a horrible person, one or the other. She either has no control of her life and she's acting out on, and I'm the one who she's taking everything out on, or she's evil and I'm the one she's taking everything out on. Either way, it's not her fault. So I tried to do everything that I could, and she yelled at me for almost 30 minutes. And I stood there and took it. The entire time I was deadpan, never raised my voice in any way, never changed the expression on my face, never got, flustered, and just kept trying to help her. Tried to move her away from all of the people so that we could talk. And, she didn't want to go in the office. That was okay. Let's go over here so that everybody does, and we're not holding up the lines. Nope. She wanted to make a scene in front of everybody. So eventually I just said, okay, look, you're obviously not going to allow me to help you in any way. So this conversation is done, because now you're just yelling to yell. You're yelling to hear yourself yell. And I've offered to help you, and I still will help you, but I'm not going to stand here all day and just let you continue to yell for no reason, because it doesn't matter what I'm offering you. You are not happy no matter what. So you can either leave the store but give me your name and I'll get one of these things for you and call you when it's here, or you can just leave the store, because we're not going to allow you to just stand here for the rest of the entire day screaming and yelling at everyone. Okay. And then she got mad at me and what is your name? I can't believe you talked to me. I'm calling your boss. And blah, blah, blah. Here's my corporate. Here's my district manager. Here's the phone numbers. You do what you need to do, but please, lady, leave the store. Because if you don't and you continue to yell and scream, I'm going to call security and I'm going to call the police and have you removed from the property. Because now you're just disrupting everybody and screaming and yelling for no reason, because I've offered to do everything in my power except manufacture one standing here talking to you. And you're not happy with that. So she got mad and she stormed out. And I just turned around and said, okay, who was next? Who was the next? Who was next? I was applauded. There was probably 40, 50 people standing there in line. I was at a register where we had 15 registers open, and they were, full rows of 20 people deep. Whoever could hear me, they all applauded me and said, I cannot believe you put up with that lady that long. And I said, she's obviously has something going on in her life, and she was taking it all out on me. And they're like, I would have never put up with it that long. And I'm like, well, that's my job. My job is so that my employees don't have to put up with it. That's my job, to take all of that so they don't get yelled at and abused by people. Yeah, but you don't need to be abused. And I agree with you. In a perfect world, people will not abuse other people, but we're not in a perfect world. We're in this one. And everybody was like, wow, my God, you're way too young to be thinking like that. And everybody, and I said, so, who needs me? And I just went back to work. But to see that drives people crazy when they're trying. And I think she was trying, then I excused myself and got on the phone, called the district manager, said, this is what happened. Know this, she's going to call you. And you better call your boss, because I gave her corporate's number too. And he said, you call corporate, tell them I'll call my boss. We'll kick it upstairs. And she called and complained about me. And they sent her one of each from everywhere. And she just went away. I told her I'll go get them. I will literally drive today and go get them and have them here for tomorrow if I can find them. And I'll call her and let her know. And she just wasn't happy. So she ended up, going away and never saw her again. So I have no idea what was going on in her life. But she was not in any place to be awake enough to look at anything as an experience or to learn from it. Okay. So she literally was stuck in this matrix and not in the understanding or being objective. She was subjective. Her life was, she was a subject to this place. That's what it means to be subjective. Okay. So I'm going to continue, but I wanted to really wring that out and let you guys know, because that's literally a very long answer, but that's literally everything that Ra was saying. This place is here for you to learn from. This place is here for you to realize this and start looking at things and not reacting. And then if you look around the world, that the world and the politicians, those people in that religion of evil, are trying to make you have an emotional response. They're making divisiveness while they're claiming that they're not. I'm going to be the unity party. We're the unity when it's the other guys. And that whole thing is a lie. They're both pointing at the other person. And so either, and this is the sad part about reality, is that either everyone in the world are 11-year-old children or everyone in the world are 11-year-old children. Okay. And that's what they're doing. And even the ones that are smart enough to realize what's going on, they're utilizing that to keep everybody in that 11-year-old child mind. And people say to me, that's just not true. And then, like, look up the IQ test. Don't look up it. If you Google what's the IQ test based on, it'll say based on a series of questions that check your intelligent quotient. Look at the actual study that was done by the doctor who created the intelligent quotient questionnaire, and look at the findings of that original study. That's what you need to do. Don't look up on, because if you go to Google, it used to tell you that. Now, if you hit Google and say, what is the IQ test based on? It tells you it's based on a series of questions that come up with a response that find your intelligent quotient. The intelligent quotient theory that test, the IQ test, is based on is what you want to look up. And that theory from that doctor states that the average human being throughout all of existence has an 11-year-old emotional mindset. Literally, your maturity level is that of an 11-year-old child on average on this planet. I used to say it was 18 until I re-looked it up, and it literally says 11 to 14. So the average person walking around near you, when you're in a anywhere with more than just you look around, 9 out of every 10 people are between the age mentally of an 11-year-old child and a 14-year-old child. Doesn't matter how old their physical body is. Okay. They could be 95 years old, and some people when they get older, they revert back and they become younger and act like they're 10, 8, 5. But the truth is, know this, the truth is that most people who think they're adults have a maturity level of between 11 and 14 years of age. Period. That's where they are. All the programming on every television in every country is designed for 11 to 14-year-old children. When I'm writing my book, every time I send it to a publisher, if I write it in there, they and I don't think about it, they tell me, you need to dumb this down. You need to realize that the average person has a 7th grade reading level. 7th grade reading level worldwide. How old are people in the 7th grade? Between 11 and 14 years of age. Okay, so the average reading comprehension is of an 11 and 14-year-old person. The IQ test is based on the theory that everybody is between 11 and 14. I'm not making any of this up. People in that mindset are emotional and easily led. And if they scare you, then you're even easier to lead than if you're not scared. Children are easily manipulated. So they're trying to keep everybody in a childlike state and tell you you're not. And then they don't give you the education that you need to be an adult. Okay. So the realization of that quickly changes your life. And I remember telling one of my sisters this, and she was like, I doubt that. It can't be that easy. And then literally months later, 6 months later, she called me up and said, oh my God, everyone is a child. All of them. I'm like, yeah, not all of them, but a good 90% of this planet are children. Okay. You need to realize that. And once you realize that, yeah, right. Like Penny just said, wow, that makes sense. Once you realize that they are, and you look around, that's the first step in avoiding the trap, is knowing of its existence. You look around at the world and you go, wow, they really are children. Look how everyone reacts to things. People who are politicians who are supposed to be running governments react like an 11-year-old boy and girl to everything that happens. Okay. Literally, over here in the United States, we have this famous feud that went on for generations, still going on in some respects. The Hetfields and the McCoys. And they're famous worldwide, so most of you probably have heard of them. That feud, you should look up how that feud got started. That feud got started because one of the McCoys saw one of the Hatfields. And one of the Hatfield, this happened in the 1700s, 1800s. I think it was the 1800s, early 1900s, 100 years ago, maybe 200 years ago. One of the Hatfields came into the bar with his mangy dog. And he was getting a drink, and his dog was his friend, and he was talking to his dog. And one of the McCoys said, What are you doing with that mangy mutt in here? Smells. Get it out of here. And he says, this mangy mutt's smarter than you are, he said back in response. And he said, maybe you should buy him a drink. He said, maybe I will buy her a drink. It was a female dog. And he said, oh, I get what's going on. You're obviously having sex with that female dog. So yeah, you probably should buy it a drink and then maybe marry it. That simple remark caused the Hetfield to attack the McCoy, and about an hour later, murder him with a knife, kill him. Because he said that to him. So you love that dog so much, why don't you marry it? Do you realize children say that all the time when they're in third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth grade to one another? But because they were in adult bodies with the mindset, you can look this up. He went, and after he left the bar, he snuck out, went and found him so no one saw him, and killed him. Everyone assumed that's what happened. And one of the McCoys went after him to kill him. And he killed that one too. And eventually they tried to have a truce, and they were at a barbecue, and they were messing around, playing games of fighting one another. And they got that guy out there, and three brothers went out to brawl with him, goaded him into saying, you can't beat the two or three of us at once. And they stabbed him to death right in front of everybody, with nobody realizing they had a knife in their hand, because they were acting like they were punching him, and they were stabbing him. And then it broke out into a full-blown 3-generation war, because someone said, what are you doing with that mangy mutt in here? Oh, you obviously love that dog. Maybe you should buy it a beer and marry it. Okay. And if you're anywhere near adulthood, that sounds insane to you, me saying that caused a feud that killed 30 members of 2 families. Okay. But it did. Well, that wouldn't happen today. That happens all the time. People who take drugs, they get all mad. And how dare you disrespect me? Because drugs retard your brain into an 11-year-old, 12-year-old mentality. So people who are on drugs, they're very upset, and they're very all about, I'm a grown-ass man, I'm a grown-ass woman, and you will respect me, because their mindset is that of an 11-year-old child now. Guaranteed. You can look all of this up. I'm not making any of this stuff up. This is all actual fact. So This place is designed, and then we'll get back into Raw, designed to trap you into that mindset. And the powers that should not be, that are in charge of the world, the 1%, they are awake enough to know about it. And they're utilizing that to their advantage to be in charge and keep themselves in charge by not allowing you to graduate to adulthood, to see them for what they're doing and become their competitor. And if you try to become their competitor, they buy you off, buy you out, or destroy you, or kill you if they have to keep themselves in charge. They are ruthless. And this is if you look around the world, this is what's going on around you. I don't care what country you're in. It's the same dynamic. The only thing that changes is the language and the culture, but the actual workings of everything. You can go back 2,000 years and read the story of Jesus in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And you will see that the Pharisees who got him killed, he goaded them into doing so, and they could not help themselves because they were annoyed with him because he was challenging their authority. How dare he disrespect us? Do you understand that? So who says that as an adult? Who tries to get someone killed and packs the court to get them put in jail, tortured, and eventually strung up on a cross, beaten, tortured, and strung up on a cross to get killed? Someone who were threatened because he was taking away their money, their power over the people. Does that sound familiar to you? It should. If you're anywhere in the world right now, you see that going on in your particular country. And if you're paying attention to the United States of America, you see it going on currently in the United States of America. Okay? And both sides point at the other side and say they're doing it. And the truth is they're both doing exactly what they're pointing to the other side and saying. That's what people accuse people of what they're doing. We talked about this. All right, so I'm going to continue with Raw and then take a look at what you guys were talking about here to see if you guys are talking to me or if you guys are just talking to each other in the chat. Okay, so let's continue with Raw, all right? Question number 3.
I will attempt to make an analogy. If an animal, shall I say a bull in a pen, attacks you because you have wandered into his pen, you get out of his way rapidly, but you do not blame him. Or, you do not have much of an emotional response other than the fear response that he might damage you. However, if you encounter another self in his territory and he attacks you, your response may be more of an emotional nature, creating physical bodily responses. Am I correct in assuming that when your response to the animal and to the other self, seeing both as the creator and loving both and understanding their action in attacking you as the action of their free will, then you have balanced yourself correctly in this area? Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is basically correct. However, the balanced entity will see in the seeming attack of another self the causes of this action, which are, in most cases, of a more complex nature than the cause of the attack of the second density bull, as was your example. Thus this balanced entity would be open to many more opportunities for service to a third density other self. 42.4 Questioner, would a perfectly balanced entity feel an emotional response when being attacked by the other self? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. The response is love. 42.5 Questioner, in the illusion that we now experience, it is difficult to maintain this response, especially if the entity's attack results in physical pain. But I assume that this response should be maintained even through physical loss of life or extreme pain.
Seeing that, yes and no, right? And I'll let Raw answer that because, that's why, and I want to stop it there because I was talking about Jesus. So literally, Jesus went through this, and Jesus was literally, and I'm not trying to sell a religion. So those of you who get triggered by that, know that I am a minister of 4 different religions on the earth. That doesn't mean that I'm trying to sell you one, because I'm not. I have those titles because I teach spirituality. I just posted literally religion versus spirituality on all my platforms, reels and shorts, or whatever you want to call them, everywhere that I post, showing you the difference in that. In fact, if you watch it on every other platform besides TikTok, you get a different audio, because the audio that I used, I made it on Instagram and then posted it everywhere else. And when I tried to post it on TikTok, that audio was not, file was not available on TikTok because they don't have a contract with that specific company. So I had to replace the audio with a different audio. So if you only hear me on TikTok, there are about 4 so far, that are 5 that I posted in the last 2 months since they had that problem. And I don't remember what company it is, but they didn't sign a contract with that one particular company. So all of the songs going backwards, there's probably 20 of mine now for 2 years that were muted because of the contract. And I just haven't gone back. If I do it live and it gets muted, I replace it. But everything that's already been there for a year or 2 years and it got muted now, I don't go back and replace it because no one's watching those anyway. Right? People they're not really paying. And then if they do, they still get what's going on. Okay. So literally you have to realize that at this point, the entire ideology of what's happening is that, that spirituality and religion has been corrupted into the control mechanism of keeping you in this place. And you have to actually pay attention, realize that there is a trap there, and pay attention to what they're saying, and then read the actual texts yourself, the Talmuds, the tomes, the Bibles, whatever you call them in that religion, scrolls. Read those yourself once you start to actually get the understanding of what's going on, instead of reading their interpretation. Because with the Christianity, which is, like 3 billion souls on the earth or consider themselves Christian, they tell you, wait here, God will come back for you. Jesus has got a bus and he's going to come back and no one knows when he's going to show up, and only the chosen, only those who are, have water thrown on their head and some man wave his hand at you and say some shit in Latin, get to go to heaven. So be careful and be ready, and just wait. You'll get a reward in the afterlife. There is no reward here. There is nothing that you can do here. And then you get a play, and then you only have one life, and then you go to this place called heaven. All of that is a farce. All of that is not true. And you learn that if you start paying attention to spirituality. That's why I posted that thing a year ago now, back in April, it'll be a year, saying that religion recruits you and spirituality waits for you to find it. Okay. So literally that's spirituality waits for you to find it. Nobody tries to recruit you into spirituality, because anyone who is a spiritual being and is trying to teach it, even trying to teach it like I am, I'm not trying to recruit you. I'm just trying to give you the tools so that you might understand what's happening, making you question. Go back, to Socrates, 3,500, 4,000 years ago, whenever he said that. I can't make anyone believe anything. The only thing I can do is get you to start thinking for yourself. Okay. And that's the philosophical mindset of a spiritualist, is that I can't get you to believe anything that you're not willing to believe on your own, because that is the truth of reality here, of this illusion. So I don't attempt. That's why I tell you, look it up. I don't attempt to make you believe anything, because you're going to believe what it is that you believe, because based on your experience in your life. That's why I also posted about that recently, saying that there are as many realities as there are humans on this place, on this planet. Every reality is only directly related to a certain point of view, yours. Okay, so your reality is not my reality. Your reality is not anyone else's reality but your own, because you are the only one who have had those experiences. So everything that you see as reality is based on everything that has happened to you and all the things that you have learned in your lifetime. That doesn't mean that reality is that. That just means that is your reality. That's why people say, woke people say it, but everybody who's awake is where it first originally came from. Live your true life. Right. And I've heard a lot lately by the writers, once the writers came back from writer's strike, on 3 different programs here in the United States, them talking about better angels, which comes from the Bible. You have to listen to your better angels. I hadn't heard that in years in this country. And I don't know who all the writers are for these television programs that I'm watching, but 2 of them are the same producers, and the third one's a different producer, but I'm not sure if it's on the same network over here in the United States, but I'm sure it has the same writers, because they came up with that all at the same time, literally within a week. They're literally on the air different days in a 7-day time period. I watched the program and heard them say, listening to my better angels, or you need to listen to your better angels. So the writers wrote that in to the storylines of at least 3, and probably around the world. My point of that is that I see those kind of patterns where other people don't. I pay attention to certain things, everything that everybody says, even on the news. And I watched one of the people on the news say it. So did that person watch the programs that I saw and were influenced by that? Or did somebody else say it to that person because they watched it? Somehow that stuff gets around to everybody. And that's what happens. So somebody says something and then it's like a drop in the bucket or one, raindrop in the ocean. And that ring from the drop or a rock being thrown in a pond, it extends out in all directions equally, and it affects everybody. So everything I say affects everyone who hears it. And then somehow that's going to change your existence. And then when you respond to me in the chat or otherwise, that changes my perspective as well. That's the learn, teach, learning. So we're supposed to realize these things and utilize these things. Okay. So you have to realize that everything has been corrupted by these people and this place. Its job is to be an ego. And then you have an ego in and of yourself that triggers you in an emotional way. So then all of these things are designed, the internet, television, movies, books, radio, all podcasts is all designed to trigger you in some way, positive or negative, or, period. That's what's going to happen. You choose to either be triggered in a positive way or a negative way. And if you don't choose, then you're just a reactionary, then you're subjective, then you're a slave to, you're subject to the whim of your own emotions until you become aware of it. And that's what Ra's talking about. You have to become aware of that and become objective so that when somebody does something, and that takes a lot of work. And that's why I'm spending so much time on it. Carl Jung ended up with the Jung Institute because he talked about this and he called it the shadow work, the looking within yourself and becoming objective. I haven't read a lot of Carl Jung stuff. You would think that I have because of what I talk about, but I haven't. I came to the same conclusion that Jung did and everyone else in this industry, the same way everyone else came to it. It doesn't. Everybody assumes that we all just read everybody else's stuff and then we all start sounding like them. That's just not true. To some extent, it is to some people. I just know from looking up what did Carl Jung say, and then I see a synopsis, and I've read that and go, yeah, and I get where I know more about Carl Jung's mindset from reading the synopsis than actually reading all of the stuff. I have a book sitting underneath this camera right here that is Emerson, and I've read like a paragraph. No, I think I've read half of the first chapter, if that. And I haven't read the rest of it. It's like a 800-page long book. I haven't read the rest of it. And people are like, are you going to ever finish that? I may. I don't know that I need to, but I may. I remember having a conversation 2 years ago, just the other day, as a matter of fact, because today's the 8th. On the 3rd, it was because by the 8th, by 2 years ago today, I was coming home from the hospital. So somewhere 2 years ago, a couple of days earlier, a female clergy came in to talk to me. And she was very, very, very awake. And we were having actual conversation about the state of the world currently in the spiritual mindset. And we had to speak in code so that we wouldn't scare the children around us, the doctors, nurses, and other patients around us at the time. And literally, she was saying the same thing, that there comes a time when you look at these people who are teaching like I am, other people who know what I know may or may not listen to me for any length of time. They'll listen to me to get the gist of where I'm at, and then they'll realize that what I'm saying is to them basic because they already know it, and then they'll go, okay, I know what he's getting at. Sometimes people will listen. I do the same thing. There are certain people that I will listen to a little bit more than others, but the truth is I keep, and I've always done this, and it's always bothered me that I've always said, okay, they got to know something I don't know. And I would listen and become more disappointed than not with everyone who's supposed to be awake, because I would be listening to them and I would say to myself, I've been saying that since I was a child, and that this person is making all kinds of money telling the whole world this. I thought everybody just knew this. When I was younger, I knew. I was very optimistic about the world, and I was like, the people that are in charge must know what I know. Everybody in the world, there must be wise people that know what I know. And so I sought them out, and I found them throughout history, and found the older I got, the more I realized that was very rare on this earth. So I've spent my life trying to help people, but doing what I do, you don't get rich at, you don't get famous for. Over time, you get somewhat famous in certain areas. So the point of this is the longest road, right, is taking the high road, as it were. That I'm sure you know what that vernacular is. What I'm speaking of. So taking the high road is the long way around, and it's not the easy road. It's the hardest way. And because of that, most people don't want to do it because it's a hard road. In fact, the guy said that to me on TikTok. We had a conversation with something that I had posted, and he had said, "That's a long, hard road that you tote." And I said, "Yeah, and because it is. Doing what I'm doing is not for everyone, because the truth is it takes you 7 to 10 lifetimes to get to knowing what I know. And I was born in this life knowing it. And when I say that to people, they get annoyed, they get mad because they think I'm being condescending, right? Until someone actually understands the ramifications of being completely unveiled. And then they go, what? Literally, I don't know how long ago it was now, 6 months or so ago, a psychic said that. She said live, she's like, you were completely unveiled. And I'm like, yes. And she's like, how do I do a reading on you and tell you something you don't already know? And I'm like, because we don't get to know. We block ourselves from certain things. I talked about that before. So there are some things that we don't know because we can't, because we've stopped ourselves. So there is some things that can be told to even somebody who is a Melchizedek. And that's a word that means somebody who's completely unveiled. So I can focus on anything that I want in my memory and bring it up and have a memory of this life, other lifetimes, going backwards and tell you how long my soul's been an individual soul. Okay, that scares people, so I don't normally talk about that. Some people think that they can, and they're getting to that, and that's the realization of your higher self. Okay, so my whole point of what we're talking about here is that you're supposed to, at some point in your life, realize I'm here to make a choice of being good or evil. Secondly, then I'm supposed to go down that road and be either as evil as I can or as good as I can, and find the balance of the energies of this place to better myself on one of those two paths. None of those are wrong. Both are right. And that drives the people on the ends nuts, because the people that are all in the churches and the popes and the bishops and all of the clergy, they don't want to have me telling anyone that. They didn't want to hear Jesus telling anyone that. They don't want to hear anybody telling, because they're trying to control you and tell you have to choose to be good and just be holy and be good and good and good and good. There's nothing wrong with that, because that's a good message. So I don't want to say they're wrong, but they're not exactly right, because this entire ecosystem only works because 14% of the population has chosen to be evil. It's supposed to happen this way. It's created this way for this system to work. So it's not going to change, no matter how hard you think you need to fight against it. It won't change the dynamic much. It'll swing. Okay, but it won't change the dynamic of this place. Good is never going to ultimately defeat evil. Only in every single person. Only in every single person. In this particular scenario, and anywhere you go that's a third dimensional place with beings just like this, in whatever form that they choose to take on that ecosystem and that planet. Okay, whether they're lizards or whether they're dolphins or whether they're humanoid or anything, in their third dimensional reality, the dynamic currently in the universe is identical, give or take the percentage of good to evil. This scares people, and they think I'm crazy when I say it. It's okay. If it's too far beyond your capacity for rational thought, then that's where you are, and that's okay. All right. So this is what Ra is trying to tell. That is what the law of one is. The law of one ultimately isn't just there's these evil people that came from Orion that the whole group of us from Orion came chasing after, and they were called the Orion Crusaders, and we're the Orion Coalition of Light attached to the Orion Council of Light. And we're here to warn you that they came here to conquer this world in a third dimensional reality, and did so. And then they ran away because they were trying to conquer the rest of the universe. They're heading towards the center of the galaxy that we're in, and that we're here to liberate you. Okay, that's what Ra is telling you. Okay, And then there's some of us down here on Earth that are doing that are attached to that contingency. And then there's other coalitions that came from other places doing the same thing. That's what we would call, you would know as the Council of Planets, the Galactic Council, whatever you've heard it referred to as. Okay. And if all of that is too much for you to understand and to comprehend, that's okay too. Because it takes 7 to 10 lifetimes for everyone to go through everything that happens to them and then start to realize and learn from all of their mistakes and learn the things they were supposed to learn. And as you learn those things, even though you get mind wiped every time you move into a new body, it's still there subconsciously or superconsciously through osmosis. So you have your learning curve changes and you learn things faster in each lifetime. So by the time you get to your 7th or 10th lifetime, you've now gotten to a place where you can graduate. And then when you do, you leave everybody behind. So rarely does somebody come back or try to tell everybody what's going on, because at some point you realize that it doesn't matter. You can't change anything except for you can get people to think. So, but then some of us have to be teachers to teach that so that it helps, right? Because if nobody teaches it, it takes a little bit longer. So and then there's a learning curve that goes on at a higher place where people come back here. And I don't want to get involved in that right now because that'll confuse you even more. I've talked about it many times. Okay. So you have to realize that, yeah. So Anna says, yes, they tried to stop Jesus so many times. The Bible does not tell you that the complete whole truth of Jesus was that he was trying to teach everyone. It was about spirituality, how to be one with yourself, meditation, to sit quietly within you, question those that are spreading lies. Yeah. Okay. So that's the truth of that. That's all of the people in throughout all of history and every, what you call religion, the person that religion was based on never wanted their ideology to be a religion. It was supposed to be a way of spiritual way of practice to ascend. It was never supposed to be a religion. That's why I show the difference of in the reels that I just posted last night, whatever you call that, short reel, whatever you call that, last night, it tells you what a religion is, and it's a structure and it's a design and it's semantics and it's the way you go about things, and it's supposed to be, and none of it is teaching you how to be spiritual. None of it is teaching you how to ascend. Spirituality is the complete opposite. It is personal. It is not an organization. It is not run by people. It is personal to each individual, and it can only ever be personal to the individual. The concept is the same. And that is what all of the religions originally, being a theologian, I can tell you this, look into all religions and see what the underlining message from all of the people, the Buddha, the Lao Tzu with the Tao Te Ching, look at even Thor and Odin and look at all religions of the earth. Muhammad, what Muhammad was teaching Moses, even with the Hebrews, all of that and what the God message was. It's all the same. It's all the same. And then they have all these laws that the humans made up and all ways of practice. And you can't, the Hebrew, one of the biggest problems in Jesus' time was that if a woman was on her period and you touched her or she touched you, you were now dirty, unclean. You had to run for your life and don't touch anybody and go to the ocean. Weird if you lived in a landlocked place, you'd be in trouble. Find a lake, find water, and then go in there, get naked and go in there and wash your clothes. And then stay there at the beach until the sun goes down. Then you can go home because now you're cleaned, right? Think about that. So somebody walks by you and brushes up against you. What if you don't know about it? So now what, are you a sinner for the rest of your life because somebody walked by you in a crowd and they were unclean and you didn't know about it? Right? So now are you being held responsible for something that was out of your complete knowing? Is God going to judge you for being unclean because you had no idea that somebody rubbed up against you while you were walking and there was a lot of people in a crowd and they touched you? And now you're what? You're going to go to hell for the rest of your existence as a soul because you had no idea that the person was unclean, that woman just touched herself and was unclean and then touched you? Right? But according to the 600 laws 2,000 years ago, yes. So that means that if anyone ever touched you, you have to run for your life and go and wash and sit at the beach until nightfall and then go home. Somebody touched me when I was in a crowd, so I ran and had to be cleaned. I mean, that's just insanity, but that was a way of life 2,000 years ago. Okay? So you have to look at that, right? So Denise said, Leo, not to sidetrack. Well, it's okay. I sidetracked myself, right? Not to sidetrack. But what is the difference between awake and woke? That's a good question. I hear people using it differently all the time. Awake is the correct term. Yes. Sorry, I just wanted to know. Okay, so to me, woke is a past tense. Awake is the present tense. Woke, one is spiritual and one is religious. Let's start with that. Okay. Woke is what all of the evil people claim they are. This is why people were saying awake, not woke. Woke suggests someone woke you. Woke suggests past tense, like you said, woke. Awake is present tense. So you're absolutely correct in your thinking of the word itself, those two words. Woke means past tense, somebody woke you up. So how can you be woke in the present mind, in the present tense? You can't be. Because woke is a word that means past tense. Evil people that are in service to self, will not try to tell you they're awake. They hate that word because they don't want you knowing that word, because awake means you are currently living in a place of awakenedness, oneness. They can't have that. I was woke. Well, what? When your alarm went off? When you were a kid? Right? So you don't hear them say that. Even trying to lie, you would think if it didn't mean anything to them, that from all the people saying awake and not woke, Tom McDonald years ago now, 3-4 years ago, he wrote that song Fake Woke. That went ballistic around the world. It's got millions and millions of views just in that one song. And all the other people talking about it around the planet. You would think that all of the people in service to self would try to drop their saying woke and say awake because they want people to believe they are. But they don't. It's like equity and equality. Look up those words and see what they mean. They don't mean the same thing. Those people are trying to tell you that they do, and they still double down on it. So you would think that evil people would start trying to tell people that they're awake. They know they can't. They could say the words, but they know that nobody will believe them when they say it. They don't want to associate with anything that is awake. Because being awake entails knowledge and understanding and creativity. So they don't say that. That's just like saying, they won't say, I am an adult. They say, I'm a grown-ass, insert man or woman. Okay? Anyone who says that are trying to sound young and hip, right? At the same time, I just heard Kelly Clarkson say it, I think it was yesterday or today on her show. I'm a grown-ass woman. If you say that, you're not. You think you are. But is she saying that because she wants to sound like she's cool still and hip, right? Or does she believe it? I believe that she believes it because she's not. I've listened to her speak, and she's not awake, right? She's an intelligent woman, very good looking, I might add, right? I'm attracted to her. I have a thing for her. Don't get me wrong. So I'm not taking shots at her and trying to say she's stupid, because she's not. She's very successful, and I love hearing her sing. Beautiful voice. She could sing anything. I could listen to her all day. Just sit there like a little boy, listen to her sing. But she's a grown-ass woman. I'm a grown-ass woman. If you say it, you're not. So you don't hear people who are in service to self say, I'm awake. They say, I'm woke. Okay? Woke is past tense. It's also negative. And that's why they don't say things that are positive. Equality is current, present tense. Equity is value, what something is worth. You should look those words up. Woke is fake, awakeness. Woke is I'm trying to say that I'm awake, but I'm also trying to let the evil people still know that I'm evil. They say things, funny that the response on television was, right when I said that. That was funny. You guys couldn't hear it, but I could. They say things and word things a specific way that they all get. It's just like gay people have their own lingo, right? They have hand signals, a certain knock they do if they're in the bathroom for men or trying to find out if you're gay and want to come over and have sex. And I don't know all those things. I just know that they exist because I have friends that are gay and they've said those things. So they in their little clique, they develop a language. They wear certain clothes and spend certain money buying all these things because they want to show that they're rich and that they eat caviar. We don't eat caviar because we can't afford to have caviar. So eating caviar shows your status. Everything that evil people do and people in service to self is status oriented. They want other people to see them and know I am who I claim I am. I'm supposed to be here. I fit into the cool kids, the cool crowd. And this is how. So the way they speak is the same thing. They do that on purpose. I know that. So yeah, it wasn't sidetracking because that was a beautiful question. Because the truth is you were exactly right in your instinct. Woke is past tense. Awake is present tense. So I'm woke like right now, and then I'm woke again, and I'm woke again, and I'm woke. No, you're either awake or you're not. I woke up, right? When did I wake up? My awakening, now it's present tense, happened in the past, but currently I'm still awake. Because you're not woke. Woke is past tense. Woke means I woke up this morning. Was that you could go back to sleep right after you wake up? You're either awake or you're not. Do you see? So they refuse to say it because people like me say it. So they say it their way. And they try to, and you don't ever hear someone say, awake is fake and woke is legit. I've never heard anyone say that. But the other way around, everyone who says awake says woke is fake. Woke is fake. Awake is what you either are or you're not. Woke is past tense. So you're absolutely right. Okay, let's continue with raw. But I'm glad that you had me clarify that because people out there in the world don't know the definition, just like what is the definition of religion versus spirituality. And that's why I put out the reel on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. Am I missing anything? Last night. Okay, let's continue.
Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct and further is of a major or principal importance in understanding, shall we say, the principle of balance. Balance is not indifference but rather the observer not blinded by any feelings of separation but rather fully imbued with love.
Right, and so Rick, it was perfect. Rick just said, like a real arsehole who might tip a beggar and think he's done his bit. Yeah, right. We'll be right for the next 10 years. Right. So, I mean, literally, I remember one of my priests back in the early 2000s when I was still going to the Roman Catholic Church, Van Dim from a great priest. He was talking to, or had gone out with the priest who had baptized me, Father Neil. And they were coming out of a restaurant and I think it was Father Neil that did this. And Van told me the story, and then Father Neil told me the story because he told it to the congregation another time. He came out with his box of food, leftovers in a styrofoam box. We do that over here in America, and hopefully they're banning that everywhere, and they're going to go back to paper because that breaks down. Styrofoam doesn't; it's toxic anyway. There's my environmental bit for the moment because I am a crazy hippie. I just don't have any hair to have long hair anymore. I do have the hair of the horseshoe, but I don't grow it long anymore. But he came out, and there was a beggar sitting on the stoop. That's the staircase for those of you outside of the United States. If I just said that and you're in the United States, you knew exactly what I meant. Sitting on the stoop, and he asked, for money, and they walked away. They just walked by him, and then Father Neil or Van, I don't remember which one did this, turned around, went back and handed him his food, and said, I don't have any money, but I do have this food, and gave him the food and then walked away. And one of the other priests said, well, he was begging for money. Why did you give him your food? And he had said, what if that's Jesus testing us? What if Jesus is watching and that was a test? And none of us, we would all fail if none of us did anything to help that man. So I at least gave him what I had, which was my food, because they didn't have any money. Priests don't walk around with cash. They don't. If you're a Catholic priest or a Christian priest, rarely do you have cash in your pocket. So, especially if you're Roman Catholic, you don't have cash in your pocket. So they would use a credit card from the church to buy food. So literally gave him what he had and then came in and had that conversation. So, right. So, but he didn't think now I'm done. Right. So Rick says but that's the problem that some people have with Catholics, because they would go to confession and everyone, because evil people will do evil shit and then they'll go to confession and confess it. And then there's, they get absolution, and then they just go out and do evil shit again. And once a week or once a month, they say, forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. And then they tell their sin and say they're sorry for it. And the truth is they're not really sorry for it, but they believe that if they say they're sorry for it, then they get a clean slate. So you're absolutely right. Some people in that mindset would tip a beggar and then go, hey, I'm good for 10 years, like you said, and think that because they did their thing once, that makes up for everything. And now I have this good karma, the clean slate, and I can get away with shit for a while now. And that's the mindset of people who are woke and not awake. So that's very astute of you, Rick, to have said that, right? To know that and to see it and to say it, because that's exactly the same. In the same respect, they may not say that they're woke, right? But that's what they're thinking. I know how to get around. I'm gaming the system, man. I tipped that beggar, so I'm cool. And God's going to see me in a different light because of me doing that. And I can get away with other shit now because I did good deeds for a minute. A lot of people that are evil do that, and they'll do good deeds thinking that it's paying for the evil that they've done, and now I can get away with shit. So then they go back to doing evil stuff and donate money to somebody and do some more evil stuff, and they justify it in their minds that, yeah, well, I do good too. So I'm not truly evil because I'm giving some of my money away. When in truth, their motivation for giving that money away is so they can have a tax break and get that money back, and so they don't have to pay so much in taxes to whatever country that they live in. So their motivation is still self-serving. It's not trying to serve the all, do you say? Not trying to serve everyone in the world or in service to others. It's truly in service to self. And they're trying to convince themselves and everyone else, even though they'll tell you they don't believe in God, they're still trying. Well, I'm a philanthropist. I give money back to the poor people. You mean after you steal it all from them, you give them 10% back, and then you get that 10% from the federal government back at the end of the year? So it's just a tax write-off, right? But I'm giving back. I don't have to do that. Yeah, you do, because otherwise you'd have to pay out taxes, and you don't like paying taxes. So, but I'm not supposed to know that, and most people don't, because they've taken that education away from you, and you don't learn that education by taking civics courses and, more importantly, economic courses and global economics, right? You have to seek those knowledges out now. All knowledge that benefits you and keeps you from being a child mentally has been taken from you, and it's no longer on the curriculum of the schools that you go to. You have to seek out that class and that knowledge to know it, because they don't want you learning. Too many people in the United States were getting rich. There were too many slaves that had more money than the ruling class. So they had to change the dynamic. So they took that education away from the masses. And now they're we're literally in this country, just like all other countries, you're becoming a renter society. They don't want you owning a car. They don't want you owning a house. They don't want you owning property of any kind. They want you renting from them. They want to own it all. They want to own your car. They want to own your house. They want to own your flat, wherever you live. They want to own it all. And then you pay them a tithing. You pay them rent. So that way they see themselves as nobles. They're in charge. They're oligarchs. They own you. They believe they own you. They just don't tell you that outright. They do, but they tell you in a way that you don't hear. This is the modus operandi of evil people. This is the information that Ra is warning you about, that the Orion Crusaders, you know them as the Anunnaki, quote unquote fingers, as the Anunnaki or whatever other Bilderbergers, Skull and Bones, Illuminati, whatever you know them as in your country, They have a name. They don't use the same name globally. They all have their own little names in every little place, so that everybody thinks they're all different societies that are behind it all, but they're all behind it. They're behind it all, 1%. And literally, that their knowledge they got from the scrolls of the Anunnaki, or that little suitcase, the plans that the Anunnaki has, was to do all of this, to keep that knowledge from you, to eradicate that knowledge from history, from your education, and that way you don't know how to do anything for yourself. And they also are trying to give you everything, you're relying on them, so that you don't do anything else, so that you just subsist for your entire life. You never get ahead. You never have enough. You only have enough not to starve to death and not to be homeless. But in this country, there's more homeless than ever before. And in most places that are becoming third world countries, that is what is evident, and that what happens. They're trying to pretend that America is not a third world country. But if things don't change in the United States in the next 5 years, it is going to be nothing more than Venezuela. Whatever third world country reference that you know of is what is happening to the United States and everywhere else in the world. They're doing this on purpose, because they wanted to go back to the monarchy system, the oligarchy system of a polyarchy where the ruling class rules. They don't want to have kings anymore, or queens, because they don't want to have one family, one race. They want to have multiples because there's many of them. And then they all fight over it and become who's they have their own pecking order anyways. So behind the scenes, they had this freedom ideology that they've been working at for the last 400 years, which was fake, which was an experiment to let you think you're free. Well, that didn't work because people were too educated and learning too much and making too much money. So they had to dumb that down now. This is why they always say that the your freedom could be taken from you, or this experiment that was freedom, this experiment that was the United States of America, because they're claiming it's done and undoing it. They're undoing your freedom in your country. This is a plan. Look it up. I'm not making things up. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. You might think I am, but if you look into it and you actually pay attention as an adult, not as a child, because as a child, they're just going to gaslight you and tell you that man's crazy. Don't listen to him. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to them either. Don't listen to anybody. Look it up for yourself. Learn to read. Go and don't use your phone and Google it, or go on a TikTok and look it up, because all of that information is being told to you, specifically spoon-fed to you. It's not real. That's why you need to go to a place there's this old, entire, dusty old place that they're trying to get rid of all around the world. It's called a library. They did it at Alexandria. They burned the biggest library on the face of the earth a couple of thousand years ago, okay, on purpose. And then in the 1500s on this planet, they burned all books, banned all books, and burned all writing so that it would be gone and nobody had education. That was a reset that was being done then, and they're trying to do it again now. And they're currently banning books. And then people come out like Joe Biden, who came out last night and gave the State of the Union address and claimed that the Republicans are banning the books, when the actual Democrats that are in charge in the United States have banned more than 150,000 books in the last year alone. His regime. The Republicans in that same time period have only banned about 50,000, and those were being done because of sexual exploitation and things like that. The other side is banned. They were claiming they're not banning any books that are out for freedom. Wanted to ban a photo of a Navy first mate from 1944, or 1946 or 47, when the war ended. In New York, he got off the ship, came over, and it was VA Day, so they were celebrating the fact that the peace was signed from the Second World War. And so the first woman he saw, he went over to her, he grabbed her, leaned her over his shoulder, and kissed her. Someone snapped a photo of it, and it's an iconic photo and statue throughout the United States for the Victory Day of the United States coming home from war. And they wanted to ban it, and a woman working for the Veterans Administration signed a piece of paper saying that photo is now going to be banned from all Veteran Administration buildings across the United States of America. And her boss said, absolutely not. That's not happening. So that person is a progressive Democrat who has that agenda. Why? Because she claimed that man was basically raping her because Here we are 90 years later, and she claims that that was against that woman's will. We don't know that that was true, but when you look at the photo, she's not trying to stop him in any way. Oh, well, she didn't know better because back then men just did that to women. That's her contention. You don't know what happened. They may have gotten married. They may have grandchildren now. She doesn't know the answer to that question. No one knows the answer to that. The woman wasn't upset about it. And the woman was happy that it was this iconic picture of the rest of her life, depicting the end of a 5-year war that the United States was involved in. And everybody was very happy. But now, 80, 90 years later, they're trying to ban that. The same people who were coming out last night saying, these guys are banning books. Yeah, they are. But the books they're trying to ban are books that are teaching people, third graders, to have sex with other third graders, and that it's okay to have sex with adults if they're not related to you, and that you should have a sex change operation. So morality out the window, but yet those people are trying to ban books, not us. Do you see? But if you don't know that and you don't look into that and you're not paying attention, then you go, yeah, those guys are evil, right? Both of them are evil. Both of them are not out for any good. Only probably 4% of anyone who is seeking power is actually there to try and help people. All the rest of them are self-serving. They're trying to get rich and be in charge and try to figure out how they can become the top dog and the most wealthy and the most powerful person on the face of the earth. You need to know that. First step in avoiding a trap is knowing of its existence. True religion of evil is not Satanism. There's only 2 million of those worldwide. Politicians worldwide, there's something like 100 million people or more. Because if you look at city, county, state, and federal governments around the planet, and everybody that works in those regimes, that's just in politics. Business, a dynamic of power in churches, schools, businesses, everything is set up there. So the truth is, there's probably 1 billion people around the earth that are self-serving. I don't know what the actual 14% of the population. If we have 7.8 billion people, 14% of that is what? 700 and is about 800. It's got to be close to 1 billion people. So that means that on this earth, there's about 1 billion of the 7.8 billion that are in fact evil. Think about that. Do the math. I don't know the exact number, but do the math. All right, let's continue here.
42.6 Questioner. In the last session, you made the statement that we, that is RA, spent much time/space in the 5th density balancing the intense compassion gained in 4th density. Could you expand on this concept with respect to what we were just discussing? Ra, I am Ra. The 4th density, as we have said, abounds in compassion. This compassion is folly when seen through the eyes of wisdom. It is the salvation of 3rd density but creates a mismatch in the ultimate balance of the entity. Thus we, as a social memory complex of 4th density, had the tendency towards compassion even to martyrdom in aid of other selves. When the 5th density harvest was achieved, we found that in this vibratory level flaws could be seen in the efficacy of such unrelieved compassion. We spent much time/space in contemplation of those ways of the Creator which imbue love with wisdom. 42.7 Questioner. I would like to try to make an analogy for this in 3rd density. Many entities here feel great compassion toward relieving the physical problems of 3rd density other selves by administering to them in many ways, bringing them food if there is hunger as there is in the African nations now, bringing them medicine if they believe they require administering to them medically, and being selfless in all of these services to a very great extent. This is creating a polarization or a vibration that is in harmony with green ray or 4th density. However, it is not balanced with the understanding of 5th density that these entities are experiencing catalyst in a more balanced administration to their needs would be to provide them with the learning necessary to reach the state of awareness of 4th density than it would be to administer to their physical needs at this time. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is incorrect. To a mind/body/spirit complex which is starving, the appropriate response is the feeding of the body. You may extrapolate from this. On the other hand, however, you are correct in your assumption that the green ray response is not as refined as that which has been imbued with wisdom. This wisdom enables the entity to appreciate its contributions to the planetary consciousness by the quality of its being, without regard to activity or behavior which expects results upon visible planes.
Right, I'm going to pause there because I wanted to comment on what Rick said in the audience. Rick was saying that marijuana is decriminalized in one state here, and he's in Australia. and legal in one small territory, the Australian Capital Territory Act, where the politicians live, right? Over here, there's a lot of states in the United States that it's legal. It's legal here in California now. When I grew up here, it was illegal, and it became legal just right after I moved back here. So I was, 50, 49 or 50, that it became legal here. And it's a felony in the state of Texas. So if I'm like walking around with pot and paraphernalia, I happen to drive into the state of Texas and I still have it, and I get pulled over, I could go to jail for basically 20 years to life for doing that in the state of Texas. And over here, I can smoke pot right now on while I'm sitting here talking to you. But some would say, on the conservative point of view and the conservative side of that measure, that they're trying to get everybody on dope, because people who smoke pot would just sit around and be like, yeah, whatever, man, I don't care, dude. Because the truth is that marijuana, like any other thing, if you're not doing it and utilizing it for a spiritual practice or ideology or thinking, you will do it to escape your reality. And just like alcohol, if you drink alcohol to escape your reality, or any other drug, and that's the motivation for what you're doing that instead of dealing with yourself and looking within your own self and doing the shadow work. And for those people who need that, they want you to have it. And for those people, that way you don't learn and utilize that. But if you're being taught the way the Native Americans were teaching their kids with peyote for generations, that it is for that, to accentuate your spirituality, and you're not being taught that, then that these people are the progressives in your country and mine are trying to make it legal everywhere. That's just like they talk about abortion here in the United States as women's rights. But the truth is that 90% of all abortion clinics are in areas where Black and brown people live. So they're trying to tell you that it's women's rights to have an abortion and have access to an abortion, because no man should be telling you what you should do with your body. Yet the truth is that the people that they really want to have abortions are people that white people don't want to overpopulate white people. And then they'll tell you white people are racist because of that. But the same white people are the ones telling you that it's about men trying to tell you what to do with your body. So the very people who ensured that most of the abortion clinics were in low communities of people of color, not white, are the very people who are entitled in telling you that it's entitled white people who are trying to stop you from having an abortion, because they're trying to tell you what to do with your body, because they're trying to use that to keep themselves in power. They're the ones who enacted it. The same people in this country who are the progressive left are telling you that white conservatives are racist, when the Civil War in the United States was fought over slavery. 100% of the people in the South who wanted slavery were Democrats. 100% of the people in the North who designed who started the war and tried to stop slavery were Republicans. The president of the United States who signed the Emancipation Proclamation was the very first Republican president. He only joined the Republican Party because he couldn't get elected as an abolitionist. The Abolition Party was to abolish slavery. Hence, coming forward after the Civil War, the Ku Klux Klan, the KKK in the United States, got very big by the 1920s. 40, 50 years later, 60 years after the war was over. 2 million Americans were in the Klan. 100% of them were Democrats around the United States. Not Republicans, not conservatives, but Democrats. Progressive Democrats. Look that up. So now they're saying, well, that's flip-flopped and all the Republicans are. By the nature of the conservative people are not racist by their very nature, because they don't choose to be that way. because they are, in fact, conservative. Look up what that word means. Do you see? Now, can they be? Yes, because not everybody is exactly the same. So can there be some white people who call themselves conservatives that are, in fact, racist? Absolutely. But you can't claim that it's a majority just because you're white. This is what the DEI stuff is about. They're literally trying to tell you that because I was born white, I'm automatically racist and I'm automatically better off than black people. Truth is, I was born to a very poor white family, an Irish family, and I grew up poor and I'm still poor. There are probably more black people and brown people in this country currently who are better off. I would almost wager that 90% of the black and brown people in this country currently are better off than I am currently. I am living at my mother's house, taking care of my mother because she has Alzheimer's, and I am on Social Security because of injuries that I got when I was working my ass off to try and make ends meet my entire life. I am not an entitled rich kid with a spoon. If my mother was put into a home today, I currently cannot pay the rent in this apartment and would have to be evicted from this apartment. That's how entitled my white racist ass is. Okay? That's how entitled my white racist ass is in the world. Okay? I have no freaking money. All the money I had in the bank is mostly gone. I have pittance in the bank, just like all the other Americans of every race. Okay? And I am not in any way, nor have I ever, and if you know my family, you will know that my family is integrated. My family is black and brown and white. Just because I look like I'm not, you should see my family, okay? My family is not in any way racist. And in fact, that was being taught to my younger brother's son, his youngest son. He came home and said, Dad, we're racist. At first, we didn't realize it was DEI. We thought it was just kids telling him that. And it turned out they were teaching him that in school. And literally, we had to sit him down and say, do our lineage. Find someone in our family that ever owned a slave. You will not, because we were slaves. We were slaves over in Europe and ran from that and came to America to seek a better way of life. We did not own slaves when we got here, and no one in our family has ever owned slaves. None of our family, there were some people in our family that were racist. Yeah. Right. But there's somebody in everybody's family, whether you want to admit it or not. Just like if you look at every religion on the face of the earth currently that is here, you will not find one that did not sacrifice humans to their so-called God. The Catholic religion, the Christian religion, the Hebrew religion, every religion, Muhammad, that all of those religions were sacrificing people at some point. So you can't look at someone and judge their religion and say, they used to sacrifice people. So did yours. And they used to own slaves. No, I'm a Viking. Vikings owned slaves. They enslaved their own people for a very long time. Every race on this planet owned slaves. There is not a race on this planet that were not slave owners. And African Americans or Africans in your country cannot say that. They want to try. We were never enslaved. The slave trade in Africa, for 99% of all slave trade in Africa or around the world that came out of Africa were Africans, not white, black Africans selling other black Africans to white people from Europe. Look it up. There are currently more than 70,000 slaves in Africa being held as a slave by black people in Africa. There are more people currently enslaved in Africa by black people than there ever were enslaved in the United States in the 150 years that they were slaves here. Look that up. Those facts did not come from me thinking them. They came from an African-American woman who looked it up and did a podcast about it. And I heard her podcast. Okay. So if I triggered you, because I'm talking politics and religion, the two taboo conversations that evil people put in your mindset so that you won't talk about either, because they don't want you learning about either, and they don't want you being awake about either. So they're the taboo conversations. Don't ever talk about politics or religion because everybody will be triggered. Why? Because they're programmed to be triggered. Like if I call you the C word and you're a female, you have been triggered. You have been programmed to go freaking ballistic and get mad, right? Or if I say you as a male have a penis this big, little tiny penis, the size of my pinky, you're designed and have been told to yourself and by your dad, uncle, somebody who is a male in your life that you're supposed to get mad about that, right? Words only matter to you. People say words to you and at you because it would make them mad. You have to choose to be triggered by someone's words. Okay? And if you think that, well, I didn't choose to be angry, they just pissed me off. Because you programmed in your head, or someone else did prior to that conversation, that if someone says these words, you are to get angry. You agreed with that. This is what Ra's talking about. Okay? You agreed with that and decided it. To know that is the first step of avoiding a trap, is knowing its existence. So you knowing that changes your perspective. Your perspective creates your reality. Your focus, this is what Qui-Gon Jinn said in the second book. Your focus determines your reality. So if you're aware of what's going on in your existence, in your reality and around you in your world, and you stay focused, that creates your reality, or you are triggered. The difference between being triggered and being focused is subjective, is being triggered, meaning you're a slave to your programming, or objective, being objective, not objective, not object reality, but objective. And that means you're aware of what's going on around you and choose not to get triggered. You're not a slave to the environment. You're staying focused and staying on point and being awake, present in the current moment, and not allowing this place to make your ego be what you listen to, or your thinking mind, because your ego is talking to your thinking mind, or the both are working together. They're not individuals that are conscious in any way. They're a part of your makeup that is designed to actually allow you to learn. Okay? It's there to give you both perspectives of what's going on around you in this place. You're supposed to become aware of it. This is what Ra's talking about in this session. Let's continue.
42.8 Questioner. Then why do we have the extreme starvation problem generally, in the area of Africa at this time? Is there any metaphysical reason for this, or is it purely random occurrence? Ra, I am Ra. Your previous assumption was correct as to the catalytic action of this starvation and ill health. However, it is within the free will of an entity to respond to this plight of other selves, and the offering of the needed foodstuffs and substances is an appropriate response within the framework of your learn/teachings at this time, which involve the growing sense of love for and service to other selves. 42.9 Question.
Right, and right there, Ra is referring to quenching your hunger and showing you as a parable of the knowledge of what's going on and the understanding of what's going on, in saying either thirst or hunger, in that your basic need is to feed yourself. So he's using that as an analogy, as a parable, to show Dawn, the questioner, what he's talking about in reference to when somebody is starving, the first thing they want to do is eat food. Okay. So in a spiritual sense or in a psychological sense, that you have to realize that the basic needs, this is what he's explaining here. That's why I wanted to stop before we go to the next question. Well, is that you have to realize your instinct, okay, to overcome it. Right. So if you're starving, you're going to try and seek food. If you're dying of thirst, you're going to try and find water. You can stop yourself. That's the difference between you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Okay. You can lead a child, eat that, I'm not hungry, so I'm not going to. I know you're not hungry right now, but we might not have food for a while. You need to last stop for gas, get gas now, because if they don't tell you, get gas now because there's 150 miles before, or 100 miles before the next fueling station. You better do it now, right? So they tell you that. Well, the same thing, right? So the spiritual-minded person is aware that sometimes you need to eat even if you're not hungry because you may not get food for a while. That's the spiritual mindset of being aware that you're trying to learn something. So he uses that as a parable to say your baser instinct is going to be to react to your environment. This is what being hungry and your instinct is to seek food. You can overcome that and say, okay, I am hungry and I know that I'm hungry, but I also know that I'm not going to starve to death. So I don't have to eat now. I need to do what I'm doing and then I'll eat later. We can make that rational thought. That's the purpose of this analogy, this parable, is because spirituality is supposed to be the same way. Religion is, I'm starving, I need food. And where am I going to seek it? Well, we'll give you the food you need. So you just come here. So you go to the church, they only tell you what you're supposed to get, and it's good food, just eat that and go away. So they're not giving you the nutritional food you need to ascend. They're giving you the food you need to quell your hunger so you keep coming back. Right? So now I'm using that parable to show you what Ra was using the same parable to show Dawn. Do you understand that? Do you understand that? So you have to become objective and realize what's going on so that you can overcome that. All of those meant the same exact thing. Everything Ra just said and all of the three things that I just gave you as analogies mean the exact same thing. Okay, let's continue.
What is the difference in terms of energy center activation between a person who represses emotionally charged responses to emotionally charged situations and the person who is balanced and, therefore, truly unswayed by emotionally charged situations? Ra, I am Ra. This query contains an incorrect assumption. To the truly balanced entity, no situation would be emotionally charged. With this understood, we may say the following. The repression of emotions depolarizes the entity insofar as it then chooses not to use the catalytic action of the space/time present in a spontaneous manner, thus dimming the energy centers. There is, however, some polarization towards positive if the cause of this repression is consideration for other selves. The entity which has worked long enough with the catalyst to be able to feel the catalyst but not find it necessary to express reactions is not yet balanced but suffers no depolarization due to the transparency of its experiential continuum. Thus the gradual increase in the ability to observe one's reactions and to know the self will bring the self ever closer to a true balance.
See, so Denise, that was perfect timing. Denise said, it takes a lot of work, a lot of practice not to be triggered by words. This is what Ra's literally saying right now. That it takes a lot of time. And it is one of the hardest things. To overcome the ego, you have to be aware of it. First step in avoiding a trap is knowing of its existence. To overcome being triggered, you have to be aware of it. First step in avoiding a trap is knowing of its existence. It takes a lot of work to meditate properly, to raise your vibration and put yourself into that place above the reach of the ego and the thinking mind and the pain body, to realize that you still are and that you didn't disappear and that you didn't stop, is just as difficult. And that's overcoming this place. The first step in avoiding the trap is knowing of this existence. So you're learning by meditation, or you're trying to, that's the attempt, to find yourself in a place outside of this place, to realize that's where I am, that I'm not this. Same thing. I am not the triggered mind. I am not the ego. I am not those things. So it's hard. It always is, because this place bombards you from the second you're born, even before that, when you're in the womb, bombards you with this illusion as real. Its job is to do that. Then your ego's job is to do that. Then all evil people are doing that. All the programming on television, everything that is being programmed to you in your school curriculum, in your job curriculum, in your religious curriculum, all of that is designed so that you will continue to be trapped in this place. All of these apps that are on there that are social networking apps are designed for the same purpose. to get you to be in service to self and want likes and clicks and power and money and influence and all of the fame that comes along with it. That is all evil. That is the opposite of what you're supposed to be doing in this life. Unless you are evil and have chosen to be evil, then it is 100% what you're supposed to be doing. But they don't want anyone to know that. So they're trying to get the 1% is trying to convince, they know about the 14%. They don't have to change anything about those people. They're trying to get the other 86% of the population of the earth to think and act exactly like they do. They're telling you that you are that way. That's what DEI is telling you. That is what equity is telling you in contrast to equality and their version of it. They're telling you you're racist. You were born into a race and therefore you have a status. And who is setting that status? But the global elite, 1%, rich people. Who is buying into that status? The 14% that are self-serving. They're absolutely saying there is a status. So when they tell you because of your race, you were born into a certain status, however you say that word in whatever country you're in, the very people who are teaching you that want you to believe it because they need you to believe it so they can have a higher status than you. And they're claiming that everyone else is inherently evil, racist, and thinking they're better than you because of the race they have. And it has nothing to do with that at all. It has to do with the individual person and their mindset, whether they are in service to others or in service to self, irregardless, as my father would say, irregardless of the nature of their DNA. What race they were born, where they were born, has to do with an individual person, but they don't want you to know that because to tell you that is to acknowledge that some people are just inherently evil and they can't have you doing that because the first step of avoiding a trap is knowing of its existence. If they admitted to you that some people are just in service to self and evil, but that some people are not, that tells you, wait a minute, so not everybody's evil, so who is evil? Then you would question, you already questioned. That questioning is going to have you starting to reevaluate everyone around you and start putting people into categories. Over time, through trial and error, you're going to put everybody into that category, and then you're going to readjust that category and keep readjusting that. Every time you learn something new about those two categories, you're going to readjust where you have everybody around you. And eventually, you're going to be more accurate than you're not. And then you're going to be able to see everyone for who they truly are. They don't want you to know about that. So they can't tell you that it's individual to individual people and their choice in life, because then you'll start looking at it that way. So they have to tell you that because you were born a certain race, you are just that way. They have to have you believe that, because currently they're trying to tell you in some countries that the white people, the ones that ultimately are in charge, that they are a part of, by the way, are the evil ones, and they try to teach everybody else down below that. In this country, I don't know the way it is in your country, in this country, the very people who are telling you that all white people are racist are 99% white people in this country, telling you that. 100% of them are Democrats and progressives, whatever they call that in your country. I'm sure it's the same. So the very people who are telling you that all white people are racist are, in fact, the racist white people they're telling you about. And until you realize that, you don't realize you're being trapped. Just because somebody comes out on television that is of the race that you are, or of a different race than white people, and they say it, where did that person go to school? In the United States, they're like, oh, that person went to Oxford and Harvard and Yale. A white college. White entitled people went there for all of time since the college was enacted, until they were forced to take people of other races by laws to include other races. So that person was indoctrinated by white, racist, enriched, rich people to tell you that white people who are rich are racist. Why? Think about that. To what end would these white racist people be telling you that all white people are racist? Because white people are in charge in the countries they're trying to currently get control of and destroy and change into a communist country that is ruled by the rich elite. And they're also trying to destroy everything about your educational system in the process so that you'd have no education and destroy everything. And they're telling you you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Rely on us. We'll give you all the food you need, all the housing you need. We'll give you all of that. All you have to do is serve. All you have to do is your part to be a citizen, which is be a slave to them and continue funneling all your money up to them. This is what Raw's warning about. And this is what's happening on the planet. And when you look at the people that are on the other side of that coin, so for those of you who are triggered and you think, oh, he's obviously a conservative because he's throwing rocks at the progressives. So he's obviously my enemy. If you're still here, that you didn't get triggered by me and leave, 90% of those people are just as evil and in on it. They don't like you. They don't care about you. Both of them would happily change power. They don't care who gets elected, as long as you're electing somebody who's going to continue their agenda. They don't care which dictator it is. They don't care which one's in power. They're still fighting because each one wants to be the top dog. So, but when the other one wins, they just shake hands and go, "It was a good fight, bro." Behind the scenes, you don't know about it. They all go out to pizza, and all of them are having sex with each other, or their kids are, and they're all hiring their own people. And so the whole thing that's going on, like here in the United States, where your Republicans are attacking the Democrats, and they're going after Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. 1% of those people who are actually trying to do that are trying to show that people are doing wrong things. 90% of what's being said is a lie. 90% of what's being said is the truth, and not at the same time. And it's all being done just because the other guys want to be in charge right now and have their say and their power. That's all it is, two factions fighting over the same evils. And then the truth is, behind the scenes, there is a certain portion of what we call over here ever swampers. Those people on both sides of the aisle, so to speak, the Republicans and the Democrats, or the other way around, however, it doesn't matter. The progressives and the conservatives, so the Democrats and the Republicans, probably 10 to 14%, there's that number of 14%, of those factions are both trying to continue the status quo and keep things going the way they're going. And then you have people that are trying to gain power and want power, and that's 90% of all the other people. And then you have 10% on either side that are actually in service to the all, in service to the others, and trying to actually do things good for the people. That is the dynamic of those who seek power. 90% of all people who seek power are evil and in service to self. 100% of the time. That is what Raw is trying to warn you about. That is what the Orion Crusaders brought here and how they take over worlds. This is what the Illuminati is doing. This is what whatever you want to call them, the Anunnaki, whatever you know them as. That is their modus operandi. That is their MO. That is what they are up to. 1% of the global power elite and money are the ruling class. They believe they own this planet. They believe they own you. And if you don't believe them, they'll ruin you if you become a threat to them in any way. And now they're taking away your ability to know it all over again because they need everybody to go back to sleep and be woke, not awake. That's the truth of what's going on. Whether you want to believe it or not, doesn't matter. You should look it up, think I'm lying to you. Because if I've triggered you and you think I'm your enemy in any way, then you're already have lost. And you already are doing exactly what they want you to do. You're picking a side and thinking there's a fight. I'm telling you that all of that ideology that is either one of those sides is the religion of evil people. That entire politic, that entire dynamic and structure that is the caste system that goes from your school to your job, to your city, your statehood, your country, to the global economics of this planet and the people who think they own it. That knowledge, that dynamic of how to run the world is what has been done to you by evil people to take away your ability and knowledge of how to ascend and how to get out of this place. This is what Ra is telling you, and this is where I'm pointing out to you what's happening on this earth. And if you look in history, which they also don't want you to know about, if you look in history, you see the cyclical nature. That means a cycle of nature. That is a cycle, meaning if it's cyclical, it means it has the same cycle. It keeps repeating itself over and over and over at the exact same time, in the exact same period of development of a race of people. Exactly. You can count on when the clock is going to strike midnight for an entire societal structure. Because if you know history, you see how it repeats itself over and over and over again. They know that, but they can't have you knowing it. Okay? Right? I will only watch truth on Rumble. At Rumble, there's more people on there that are trying to tell you because they get banned from everywhere else. I'm even on there, but it takes so long to upload anything. And then the only way I can go live there, I think, is I have to pay them a tithing. So I just don't do that. I just don't. I pay certain people, and then I go live where I can go live for free. Eventually, that will change as well. I agree, because eventually they'll probably, if I get popular enough, they'll ban me from. Again, I'll get deplatformed from Google, because that happened 2 years ago now. 2 years ago today. Today's the 8th for me, right? Let me put on my glasses. 2 years ago today. 2 years ago today, I was deplatformed from Google, and more than 450 episodes of my podcast were deleted when I was deleted off of all Google products. I'm back on there under a different email account. But 2 years ago today, I got banned from there. And the reason I got banned from there was because I said, hold on, I'm only going to give you access that you were supposed to have. And they said that I went against their terms of agreement when I said, when I applied them and said, you have to be upheld to your terms of agreement. And then they said, I went against their terms of agreement by telling them they had to be by their terms of agreement. If I'm agreeing to this terms of agreement, then that's what you're supposed to agree to too. That's the agreement that we have, right? So you only have that much access. And then they were like, you're out of here. Not a joke. Not a joke. Okay. All right, let's continue.
Patience is requested and suggested, for the catalyst is intense upon your plane and its use must be appreciated over a period of consistent learn/teaching. 42.10 Questioner: how can a person know when he is unswayed by an emotionally charged situation if he is repressing the flow of emotions, or if he is in balance and truly unswayed? Ra, I am Ra. We have spoken to this point. Therefore, we shall briefly iterate that to the balanced entity no situation has an emotional charge but is simply a situation like any other in which the entity may or may not observe an opportunity to be of service.
Do you see? So that was my point, literally, of everything that I was saying, right? And that's why I kept going, I want to get to that point. So literally, how do I know whether I'm awake? How do I know whether I'm avoiding the trap? If you do not ever get triggered by anything everyone says, you get yourself into that mindset of, I'm not going to allow anybody to trigger me. It's hard work. It is hard work. Shadow work is hard work. Not listening to the ego is hard work. Not listening to the thinking mind is hard work. Not bowing to this place, being objective, not subjective, is hard work. That is the test of this place. It is designed from the beginning of what we call time, when the creator designed this scenario. It was designed to do that. The function of the third dimension through the seventh dimension, its job in that octave, the first octave from the first dimension through the end of the seventh dimension, that bottom octave of the development of beingness. Its job is to do this. And then your job is to slowly move away from this. The first place you become self-aware is third dimensional life. And then you are mind wiped. You no longer know who you are. And from that point on, you are in the trap of the mind. You are in the trap of this place, the place of doing. And you, whether you know it or not, your job is to become aware of that and then seek the food that you are hungry for. Seek the knowledge that you're hungry for. And learn from the knowledge. First of all, learn that that's what you're hungry for is knowledge. Second, seek knowledge. Ask questions. Question everything, question everyone, question all of existence, all of reality. Then, that's the categories. Put things into perspective. And then through trial and error, shifting everything around, get that perspective set for yourself. And then weigh that against everyone else and everything else to see if you're on the right track, if they're on the right track. Everybody can't be crazy. So somebody has to be on the right track. What is the right track for me? And how does that look? What is the right track for everybody else? And how does that look? Where do I fit into all of that? This is your development and how you're supposed to develop. Then you start to become wiser and wiser and you learn things. And then when you go and you die in a lifetime, you actually remember all of that. And then you go, oh, good, I learned those things. So I don't have to learn those again. So now I want to learn this, and this. Then you design a life, you come back, you get mind wiped, you don't know it. Those things are designed into the matrix. Co-creation, co-creator of the matrix. You design for yourself and you plug it into the system. The system designs a life that will give you those. You come down here, those scenarios pop up, whether you're aware, you're now subconscious, you're now not consciously aware of it. The things you wanted to learn are happening before your eyes for you to see, to learn from. And then you keep moving on, and your job is to move away from the trap and then learn what you're supposed to learn going forward in what you're doing. If you're evil, you can stay as evil as you want until halfway through the sixth dimension, halfway through that density, and then you have to repent. You have to go back, switch, and become in service to others, not in service to self. You don't believe me? Keep going that way. Eventually, if you keep going and you don't repent until you get there, you'll be stuck in that wall. That's the purgatory. That's the hell. That's the place that you're the furthest away from the light. And you will then eventually get tired of it because you have immortality and you're evil and everyone's evil and you're dying over and over and over because of evilness killing you and I'm the greatest evil and I'm going to stay around. I'm the Sith Lord and someone else is going to kill you because they want the Sith Lord. Then you start over and you got to come back up and become the Sith again. Eventually you get tired of it and you go, I've been doing this for 100 generations. I'm tired of it now. I don't want to do it anymore. And then you'll repent. And then you start moving up again. Whether you believe me or not doesn't matter. It's not mine to try and prove that to you. Mine is just to warn you of it, to give you the choice. You can do whatever you want. You want to be evil, be evil. Everyone serves the all. Doesn't matter. So without the ecosystem here, without 14% of the people being evil here, we would all be lazy, sitting around smoking pot, nothing to do. I'm God, you're God, we're all God. We'll get there eventually. That's the way things were before the veiling. So the veiling was thought up by the creator to stave that off, that laziness. Creator is inherently lazy in and of itself. So then you're supposed to learn these things. And then there's all this other stuff that you're probably not even ready for that is beyond that, going up to the seventh. Okay, let's continue. Right? So, but the first step in avoiding the trap is knowing of its existence. So here you're supposed to learn that first. And then you seek that food that you're looking for, that knowledge. Let's continue.
The closer an entity comes to this attitude, the closer an entity is to balance. You may note that it is not our recommendation that reactions to catalyst be repressed or suppressed unless such reactions would be a stumbling block not consonant with the law of one to another self. It is far, far better to allow the experience to express itself in order that the entity may then make fuller use of this catalyst.
Okay, I'm going to stop there because we're going to the next question, but I wanted to put what Anna said up here in this, right? Bang, put it up on there and read it to you. For those of you listening on the MP3 broadcast, but for those of you watching on the MP4, you can see what Anna said in the chat. We all have the knowledge within us. The truth, it's whether you believe in your own team and yourself, not the ego that keeps you down. That's absolutely correct. Okay. So all the truth, everything you need is within yourself. That's also what I posted the other day, yesterday, or the day before. That maybe it was about in the last week. I posted saying, you maybe 2 weeks ago, you will never see the kingdom of heaven until you realize that it is within yourself. Okay, that's the truth of it. You can seek. It's not. It is not, and that's how it finishes. That it is not some space somewhere for you to go and find. That is the synopsis, said in a different way, of the ideology of the Tao Te Ching, the Book of the Way, in Lao Tzu, when he said, "He who seeks it will not find it," meaning looking for it in the physical. He who grasps at it, gropes for it, will not grasp it. This is directly from Lao Tzu. Okay. If you have this container, as I hold up my glass that has water in it, what is more valuable, the container itself or the space that the container occupies? Meaning what you can put in it. You have a house. When you build a house, what is more important, the house that you build or what you put in the house? The house becomes a home when you move in it and make it your own. The cup is only a cup until I put something in it that becomes of value, water, a drink of some kind, right? Or I fill up this cup as my cup of my soul. This body is the cup. What you put into it is what you are inside. Do you see? So if I drink the water is giving me life. I can't eat the glass. I can't eat the container and sustain life, but I can put something in it that it will hold, that will give me sustainable life. The same goes for your physical body. Your physical body can't give you heaven. But what you put in, what's inside of your physical body can. This is why Jesus had said that the kingdom or the food that I will feed you, you will never be wanting food again. The water that I will feed you, you will never be thirsty again. You'll never go hungry and you'll never be thirsty. Because what he was telling you is that it's not this physical thing that I'm giving you. It's a spiritual. And there you never have hunger. You never have disease. You never grow old. You never die. You're never thirsty. Okay? So you will never see heaven unless you realize that it's within you. Everyone, what you see in this world, whether it's hell that you live in or whether it's heaven that you live in, is directly related to your focus. All the truths we cling to depend greatly on a certain point of view. Our own, yours, mine. Okay? So if you believe that your life is hell, it's because you're living in a life and choosing to be in a life that is creating that hell. No, it had nothing to do with me. And then you're telling yourself you're a victim and that my parents or my society or the color of my skin made me who I am and that you can't change that. That's DEI. That's what they're teaching in the schools around the world, especially in the United States, but I believe it's being everywhere around the world. They're teaching you that inherently, because you were born with a certain DNA, that you'll never be anything other than that DNA allows you to be, because of the rich white people that they are, as a matter of fact, are telling you. If they get you to believe that, then you will never become anything because they told you that you won't. That's why I put out that thing that said you were free from the moment you were created on my reel. Short, whatever you want to call it. You were free from the moment you were created, not from the moment you were born. I specifically didn't put the word born because born is physical. Okay, you were free from the moment you were created. not from the moment you were born, because born is physical. Born is past tense. Born is future, past, present tense. Separation. It is the place of doing. Created suggests that you are a higher thing than the physical body. That's why I did that. Some people don't get it when I posted it. That's okay too, because you've through osmosis, meaning the words ring true even if you understand them or not. If you understand them and then you get it. If you don't and you only understand what I wrote, then it's still in there in the back of your mind. All right, let's continue.
32.11 Questioner. How can an individual assess what energy centers within its being are activated and in no immediate need of further attention, and which energy centers are not activated and are in need of immediate attention? Ra. I am Ra. The thoughts of an entity, its feelings, or emotions, and least of all its behavior are the signposts for the teaching/learning of self by self. In the analysis of one's experiences of a diurnal cycle, an entity may assess what it considers to be inappropriate thoughts, behaviors, feelings, and emotions. In examining these inappropriate activities of mind, body, and spirit complexes, the entity may then place these distortions in the proper vibrational ray and thus see where work is needed.
Right. So because you're programmed and because you have an ego, the id, the ego, the conscience, as well as your consciousness, who you actually are, you're going to have these thoughts. The ego's designed to do that. Your thinking mind only does what the input is given to it. So if the ego is talking, you're going to hear yourself think. The awareness that I am not that ego, I am not the thinking mind, well, then why is it happening? Because it's designed to. It's part of this place. It's there for the balance of the choice between good and evil. So you have to have the ego and the conscience. Conscience is there to say, don't do that. You wouldn't like that. That's wrong. You shouldn't harm people. The ego is there to go, fuck them, take it, rape that woman, steal that thing, eat that food. Who gives a shit if it's someone else's lunch? Eat it anyway. Fuck them. That's the ego's job. And then the opposite of that is the conscience. Its job is to give you that balance between you're supposed to realize that. That's the first step in avoiding the trap, is knowing of its existence. That you have those two things that are processes in this place that go on, that is this internal voices that are supposed to go on. Some people equate those and give them personalities, and then they think that they have multiple personality disorders because one personality. And if you look at people, and if you have taken psychology or psychiatry and taken psychological evaluations or learned about that, you realize that all of the split personalities take on one of those guises of either conscience or ego. Even if they have given it a personality, one is evil and one is not. And you could have many, you could have 100. All of them are going to be either evil or not. Okay? Because that is the ego and the conscience talking to you. You equating them with the separation of it's not me is a misunderstanding in the early time period, and you give it a name. And you equate that with a personality. It'll take on, your ego will take on that persona in a second. Take it on, because then you're paying attention to it. And then it'll want you to take over and allow it to act out. And you'll say, it wasn't me. It wasn't me that was doing that. It was the other persona. And I can't stop him or her. Okay, that was the whole purpose of Fight Club, was to show you that Ed Norton's character was the conscience, and what's his name, Tyler Durden, was the ego. Okay, and Ed Norton had to bring the two back together and find out who Ed Norton's character was, and then and so that happened quickly with the other personality, but the ego was still there, and that was Tyler Durden. Eventually, he had to have the realization that it was all him. And that's what happens towards the end, is he realizes all of that was an internal conversation, that Tyler Durden, he never saw him. Tyler Durden was, in fact, him. And that was the moment when he realized that he was actually Tyler Durden. Then he had to kill his demon, because Tyler Durden, the ego, became his demon. And that's when he, went to kill himself, and it went out through his neck. And Tyler Durden died, and he then merged all of his personality back to him. and then was, with the woman and said, "You caught me at a really bad time." She's like, "Oh my God, you've been shot." Yeah, and he's holding his neck where he had shot himself, But that was the entire purpose of that. And I'm sure that that's still played in psychology classes around the world. And if it's not, it should be. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is another one that I don't want to get involved in explaining that, but that's another one you should watch. That's usually played in a psychology class as well. Those were movies that were showing you the dynamic between the personalities and the personas, the archetypes. In fact, all 7 archetypes were in both of those movies, played by different characters, especially in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. They have all the archetypes in there. The other one was, what was that comedy? There was a comedy that was about the same thing, where I forgot what, Nuts Like Us, I think was what it was called. Same thing. They had all the 7 archetypes in there. And if you don't know anything about psychology, you don't catch that. It's not. Again, that's the first step in of avoiding a trap, is knowing of its existence. If you don't have the knowledge of what's happening, you don't see that. They take that knowledge away from you, so you don't see the analogies in these movies or storylines, or even in what I'm saying, because you have no point of reference. Do you see? So you have to have the point of reference to have perspective. So the only way you can truly have perspective is to learn point of reference. And to learn point of reference, you have to ask questions. To even want to ask questions, you have to know that you're in a trap. First step in avoiding a trap is knowing of its existence. So that's why I say Socrates, I'm referring to Socrates again from whatever that was, 5,400 years ago, or whenever that was, 3,500 years ago, depending on what timeline you're from. I can't make anyone believe anything. The only thing I can do is get you to think for yourself. Because the more you know, Socrates also said this, the more you know that you know nothing. Okay. All right, let's continue. And I'm going to see if, I don't know how long I'm going to go, because we're already at 2.5 hours in, right? Yeah, 2 hours and 32 minutes. So we'll take another couple more questions. So if you have any other questions, ask them in the chat now before I decide to take off. All right, let's continue.
42.12 Questioner. In the last session you said, the self, if conscious to a great enough extent of the workings of the catalyst of fasting, and the techniques of programming, may through concentration of the will and the faculty of faith alone cause reprogramming without the analogy of fasting, diet, or other analogous body complex disciplines. What are the techniques of programming which the higher self uses to ensure that the desired lessons are learned or attempted by the third density self in our third density incarnational laboratory?
Okay, before he answers that, right? Rick said, yeah. He says, I watch movies. Was that Rick? No, Denise said that. Denise said that. I watch movies so differently now. That's what happens. When you become awake, you then take stock in everything that you've ever learned, and you go, man, I got to re-listen to every song. I got to reread every book. I got to rewatch everything. And from that point on, you cannot unlearn what you have learned. Once you see it, you can't unlearn it. And that's when the God shall come as a thief in the night. That's what that reference actually meant, was your awakening, your spiritual awakening will come as a thief in the night. Literally, you don't know when it's going to be. It's just going to hit you. And it's going to be never when you're expecting it. And all of a sudden, you're going to see the entire universe completely different. From that point on, for the rest of your existence in this lifetime, you will never see the world again the way you did, even if you want to hide from the world. You cannot go back into the Matrix. Like in the movie, he saw reality, the character that was trying to turn over everybody, and he made a deal with Mr. Smith to turn over Neo and everyone. But I want to be plugged back into the Matrix. I don't want to remember any of this, and I want to be somebody important and rich. Because he didn't want to know the reality of the world anymore, because he knew that once he saw it, he couldn't unsee it. The only way he could unsee it was to reinsert it into the Matrix. So the truth is, the only way that you're ever going to see any of this, not the way you do now, is only after you die in this lifetime. And that's why some people kill themselves, because they are in fact evil, and they've woke up enough to where they can't unwake, and then they try to do what they can to reset themselves. They murder a bunch of people to gain more power on the evil side, and then kill themselves, because that's also heinous. That's also heinous, and hope that they graduate. And if they don't, it doesn't matter anymore, because their life is over and they're going to start over and not know any of this. So when some people become distraught it's usually because they were self-serving and they did evil shit, and then they realized it and realized what they did were wrong, and so they killed themselves. Or they're doing it because they're murdering everybody and killing themselves. They're starting over. Either way, they're making the choice to be revealed and start over, whether they are aware of it or not. So the truth is, once you have that awakening, that's why that story about the guru, the Sufi who was trying to read everything he could read, and we all do that. That's why it is all of us. Even though I tell the story, the same thing happened to me. You try to read everything that you can and learn everything that you can and watch everything that you can, and then and you're trying to be awake. And then one day you're going to wake up and realize you are awake. Whether it's waking up from sleep and going, wait, I know, now all of a sudden I know everything. Or it just dawns on you or becomes apparent to you when you become the parent now, the adult, and then you can never unlearn that. I tell people that when you're starting your ascension and you're starting to wake up, you hit that point of no return. Before you become completely fully awake, you can stop yourself and not do it. Once you become awake, you can never go back. And then if you don't push past that moment of sadness, you will be sad for a long time until you get over it. Okay. I did that at a very young age, and I was very sad. And the more I learned about the realities of the world, the more I was disappointed, because I had assumed that everybody was awake like me. So therefore there had to be the majority of people. And I just was like, well, my father's very awake and people around us are very awake, so it's probably everybody. And then the more I looked around, the more I realized it was not. That's disheartening. It is disheartening and concerning. So when you first wake up, it's disheartening and concerning. It's sad, because then you look around and go, wow, oh my, they're all children. And that's sad to learn that. So you have to push past that. And this is why people like me are here. We're here to try and assist you in that learning curve, so that when you do wake up, you don't just get sad and go, fuck it, I'm not doing anything, I'm just going to quit. There's no purpose. There's no reason for it. Because that's where the first instinct is to do that, and to pull back into yourself and go, it doesn't matter what I do, so who cares? I'm just going to be a hermit. And many conversations I had with my buddy Paul, who has now been gone for a year, in February on the 11th. But I had many conversations over the years where he was like, I'm just going to become a hermit, screw it. And I was like, you got to get past that. You have to push past that, Paul. That's your first instinct, because it's not wrong, but you're as an adult, you have the responsibility to do something in some way, even if it's minor, even if it's just, I'm just going to be a positive person and not tell anybody anything. I did that for a very long time. I was very quiet. I didn't talk like I do now. I was the quietest guy in the room. You can ask my family and friends. For years, from the time I was probably 14 until I was about 22, I was the guy that you never remembered. I was the guy that was unimpressive. I was the guy who didn't have an opinion about anything. I was the guy who never spoke. I was the wallflower. I was the guy that people would go, who's, I don't know did I meet that guy? I don't remember seeing him there. That was me. I was that person, because I was looking around and observing and experiencing this. And I was just not telling anyone what I knew, because I was taught by my father that first rule in Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club until you come into your own. You don't tell people this knowledge, because until you can stop them from hurting you, you can't tell them that. If you go to school and you tell your friends this, they will tell people, and evil people will come and take you from me, and you will not get to live with me anymore. And they will put you into the system. And I know that he's right. Then in my early 20s, I was married and my wife had a son, and we realized the same thing. In this country, in the United States of America, the most liberal place on the face of the earth, in the San Francisco Bay Area, the most liberal place on the face of the earth, just about, we couldn't tell anyone that we were practicing Wiccans, pagans, because they would come and take her son from us because of their Christian, Judeo-Christian ways. In the most liberal place where you could be anything you wanted to be, in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is the most liberal place on the face of the earth, you could not, back then, 30 years ago. Now it doesn't matter. Now you can openly be anything that you want to be in the state of California. Some places still around the world, I couldn't say that. People would then judge me, lock me up. Okay. So I was quiet. I didn't tell anybody anything, never contradicted religion, not politics, nothing. Nothing like I am now. But once I became an adult and came into my own and realized how I could stop them, they could no longer take me and put me into the system unless they could prove I committed a crime. I then started speaking. And now people are like, oh my God, he never shuts up. Okay. So I went through that, even though I was awake, I still went through that disappointment stage and being kind of depressed with looking around and going, wow, it really is that bad here, isn't it? Wow. But then you have to see how it's not. So that's the learning curve of being awake. Is their first instinct is give up, not do anything. There's no reason. Or actually, the first instinct is I have to fight. You're still in that four-dimensional lizard brain mode. Once you get past that, you go, I have to just close off and learn what I'm going to learn and let them all do what they're going to do and just isolate myself. That becomes the next step until you realize that you can't just do that because they're aware of it. Evil people are aware of it, and they're counting on when people first wake up of them deciding not to do anything. And then you have to realize that you have an obligation because as the adult, you realize I'm the creator. I did this to myself, and I'm doing it to everyone here. Created all of this. I'm a co-creator. So therefore, somebody has to give the other opinion, and you either choose the way you're going to do it. I could just live my life and just be a good person and never tell anybody anything. It would still have an effect that would ripple out to the people that are in any way witness me, talk to me, or around me. So you don't have to do what I'm doing and say these things and talk. Not everybody has that within them to be attacked and have the strength to weather that, right? Not everybody has that. So not everybody's required to do what I do, right? You're not. You're just not. You have your own way. And some people are just like, I didn't come here to do that. I just came here to brush up, to learn this stuff for myself, and I'm going to move on. That's okay, too, because you're still, just by choosing to be in service to others, your people around you know that. They sense it. Evil people hate you for it. Good people love you for it. So you still have just as much of an impact on people, but you will never, ever see the world the same way you did again, and you can't turn it off. Just know that. Okay, let me continue here for a couple more minutes, and then I'm going to go.
Ra, I am Ra. There is but one technique for this growing or nurturing of will and faith, and that is the focusing of the attention. The attention span of those you call children is considered short. The spiritual attention span of most of your peoples is that of the child. Thus it is a matter of wishing to become able to collect one's attention and hold it upon the desired programming. This, when continued, strengthens the will. The entire activity can only occur when there exists faith that an outcome of this discipline is possible. 42.13.
Okay, I'm going to stop there, and we'll start next week on 42.13. But yeah, Rick, no, you're absolutely right. Rick said, I'm struggling lately. We all do, brother. The algorithm of the cycle of the moon is that I'm struggling currently. The new moon is this coming week, Monday or Tuesday. For you, Tuesday or Wednesday is the new moon. So we're in the cycle of March, right? January, February, March, 3rd. So I think we're on the 3rd or 4th full moon of the year. It depends on how many full moons we had in each month. So we're on the 3rd, right? There's that number 3 again. So we're on the 3rd, halfway through the 3rd. Then we're now on the 3rd, 4th new moon. So we're ending the third dimension, the place of doing, yellow chakra, energy of the year. Moving now away from winter in the northern hemisphere, moving away from summer in the southern hemisphere. You're moving into fall or about to. We're moving into spring or about to. So literally you're in that cycle of the beginning of the next phase of your existence whether you're going into fall away from summer, or whether, autumn, or whether you're going into spring away from winter, depending on where you are in the world, you're in one of those places, and you are in the end of the third chakra energy of the cycle of the year. So you're about to begin the fourth, moving away from the into the green heart chakra, heart of the year cycle of either darkness or light, depending on whether you're in summertime going into autumn or you're in wintertime going into spring. Either way, it's still the 6-month cycle of the year, the third cycle, the 1/4 cycle. You're the 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Heart chakra. So you're at 1/4 of the year, or 3/4 of the year, or somewhere in between. You're still at the same place, depending on whether you're in northern or southern hemisphere. So it's the beginning, again, the ending of the cycle and the renewal. So we run into that energy just before it's becoming dawn. You're going into the dark days of summer. I'm going into the dark days of winter, about ready to go into the bringer of life. You're about to ready for the God to die and go into the place without the God, the wintertime. So each one of those is the end of a cycle and the beginning of the next cycle. That's one of the harder times for all of us. Those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, soon we will have all of the yelling of our ancestors and the guides, because spring, life is renewing in the Northern Hemisphere. You are in that area where all of life is ending. So you don't have your guides talking to you because you can't hear them. You don't have your higher self talking to you because of what we would call Lent. You're going into that all of the energy of the universe is not able to contact you as much. So it's harder. You have a harder time. We will have that same cycle when we go through our summer into winter in the Northern Hemisphere. So you're in the middle of doing that now down there in Australia. So it's normal for us at this stage of our development on the Earth to be at one of the cycles that is the hardest for us personally. And then, depending on what sign you are, of your birth sign, your personal algorithm also ebb and flows. And if your personal algorithm crosses the same time that the algorithm of the planet is lower and your algorithm is lower, you're going to be a mess. And I think that's where you are currently, Rick. I know I am. So I'm having a really hard time emotionally. And when I wake up, my ego is screaming at me and telling me all kinds of negative shit. And I'm doubtful of myself. And it takes me until I wake up and then get back into myself and go, what? Stop listening to that. And then I regain my confidence. And so it is work always. Every time you go to sleep and first wake up, your ego yells at you and tells you all negative shit, or says, I'm the greatest in the world, man. I'm fucking it. I'm the coolest. Everybody loves me. I'm the cool guy. It's one or the other or both. And then once you wake up fully, you start to become more of yourself because you stop listening a little bit more to the conscience and the ego, because now you're used to that chatter again and you start tuning them out. But when you first wake up, it's loud. And if your algorithm is at the lowest point, not the highest point, that chatter is loud. And then if the moon is at a cycle where it's almost a new moon in the beginning again, that's a low cycle and it's the beginning again. So that chatter is loud, so it gets hard. You have to learn that cycle of the planet, the cycle of the moon, your personal cycle, and find out where that is and when they all coincide. If you're aware of it, you pay attention to that. You go, oh, next week's going to be hard for me. I better be ready for it. I have that ability about myself, and so I'm aware of it. Doesn't make it easier. Doesn't make it easier, Rick. It's that time of year for all of us right now. And we're the farthest away from that beautiful Christmas time when everything is beautiful. This is almost this, it'll be 6 months. Right now we're in the third month. So wait until we're 6 months away, right? Or for you, you're going into that. So you've already passed that 6 month. You're starting the fourth quarter now, where we're starting the second quarter here in the Northern Hemisphere. So you just have to become aware of the algorithms of the cyclical nature of each 24-hour cycle, 364 and a quarter day cycle, your personal cycle that is every day, your personal cycle that is every month, and how all of that affects you as the seasons change wherever you are on the planet. You have to become aware of all of that. The first step in avoiding a trap is knowing of its existence. So if you identify a problem and you're aware of it, which you are, so that's the first step in avoiding a trap. You know, because you said, I'm having a hard time right now. So you're aware of it. So you weren't just having a hard time, you became aware of that. So you're awake enough to go, oh, well, I'm having kind of a hard time. You admitted that about yourself. That's a good positive because you're aware that you're having that and you're not afraid to say it. In fact, even in public, you just said it in the chat, in which I unfortunately outed you to the rest of the world, but they're probably having the same problems. And Denise just said, who was that? Denise just said, me too, right? So you literally have to work harder. And then if you're moving up a level, whatever that level is in your development, when you come to the end of a level, it's always harder. That's when I'm lifting weights and all of a sudden I'm not getting any stronger and I'm still doing the same number of reps and it's just not helping. And then one day all of a sudden it's super easy and you do 10 times what you did. Same thing with trying to lose weight and I can't lose any weight and I'm stuck right here at the same weight no matter what I do, no matter how much I work out, no matter what foods I eat. Then all of a sudden you lose 5 pounds in a day and a half. 10 pounds in a week, right? Those plateaus are levels of attainment. And every time you get to break through from one level to the next level, it's the hardest time in whatever your endeavor is, whether it's dieting, exercise, spirituality, development in listening to the egos, okay? No, I didn't look at. Denise said, "Did he freeze?" You know, if you can hear me, then my signal's fine. Maybe I did for a minute, but if I'm frozen on your screen and you can hear me, hit refresh because according to me looking at StreamYard, I have full Wi-Fi. So it's not me freezing, Denise. So hopefully somebody text Denise and say, try refreshing your screen. So I didn't freeze as far as I know. Yeah, there you go. Denise said, Penny goes, nope. So it may be that she did because somebody just dropped out. Okay. So I'm going to leave it there and we'll start on session 42 question. I'm going to put this into my phone so I don't forget. Question number 13. That's where we are for next week, so I don't have to try and look it up. So literally, we will pick up there next week. Maybe I'll back up to a question. You know how I always do that, right? I always do that so that I know. Sorry, I'm typing at the same time. So I know exactly where we are because otherwise I'll have to look. So maybe I'll back up. I usually do that, back up a question or two. So that'll give you guys something to think about, right? We're in that time currently. Be aware of the cycles of yourself. Learn your algorithm when you're up, when you're down. Learn the algorithm of your sun sign and how that goes up and down according to the moon. Learn how the planet every day, the cycle, and what time of year. All of that cycle, knowing all of that helps you, just like Ra was saying here, literally, helps you for the realization of that distortion and how to put it into context and how to deal with that, whatever it is, getting triggered, emotions, hunger of any kind, knowledge of any kind, belief system of any kind, and all of the bombardment. The first step in avoiding a trap is knowing of its existence. The only way that you can truly ascend is to be aware that there is an ascension, to be aware of how to and what to do. So you have to be unemotional in your response to all stimulus at all times. That's hard. Hardest thing you'll ever do is what I just said to do. That takes practice. And even I've been doing it my entire life and was born awake. And I still am subject to it because I am in a three-dimensional body in a three-dimensional place. So because of that, there are laws here that I am bombarded by the ego, by external egos, by the conscience, by the consciousness, by the ego itself, and all of this entire ecosystem. So until I leave this place, this will continue to happen. And then it only gets lessened as you move up to the fourth and the fifth and the sixth and the seventh density. And you become less physical, more energy, less dense physically, and more dense vibrationally in your beingness away from the physical. And the ego gets lessened and lessened and lessened, and so does the conscience. Not the consciousness, not the beingness, but the conscience, that which says, don't do that, that's wrong. Both of those factors fade as your physical body fades, as you move away from the physical plane into the astral plane. Then there are things that start to move into that I'm not even going to get involved in. There are portions of life and beingness that come into play and become more prevalent as you move away from the physical into that. But I don't want to focus on that right now. That'll be for a teaching later on once my book comes out, in probably part of my second book that I'll be publishing in a couple of years. Okay. But I'll be teaching that as time goes. Right now, I'm teaching physicalness and moving into beingness and what that entails and how that works. Eventually, I'll also be going into the higher ideologies and that kind of stuff. But right now, for this portion of what I'm here to do in the next couple years, but as we move closer to 2032, that will change for the world, because then I can tell more to the majority of the people on this planet because of the cyclical nature of the expansion of consciousness of this entire species of human existence and experience on this earth. So until that, I can't say a lot, but individually, I can tell you what you're ready for. That's why I work with people also individually, because I can give you everything you're personally ready for when it's just us one-on-one. I can't do that here because I can only give you out there listening to me what the average human being is capable of understanding. That's all I can say. Okay. All right, guys. I love you guys. This has been Orion Rising. I am your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into the show. I will see you guys next Friday. I love you guys. Have a great weekend. Even though it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you're still on the weekend. All right. Beginning it in the United States, everybody else to the east is already in the weekend. Either way, have a great weekend. I'll see you guys later.